Good evening and welcome. I'm Chairman Scott Lambert, and I would like to call to order the October 12th, 2022 East Whiteland Township Board of Supervisors meeting. Please stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I would like to introduce our attendees here at the main table. On my immediate right is Vice Chairman Rich Orlow, and next to Rich is our solicitor, Bernadette Kearney. On my left is Supervisor Peter Fixler and Township Manager John Nagel. Some decorum points. The meeting is being recorded. Residents will have the opportunity to comment after each agenda item has been discussed by staff and the board. Any topics not on the agenda can be commented for up to 3 minutes during the public comment section under number 9. As always, upon joining the meeting, please introduce yourself and provide your address before you speak, and please come up to the mic so you can be heard through the Zoom. Tonight, we mourn the loss of, to our community of 2 residents, Larry Stouffer and Everett Beauregard. Larry Stouffer was a longtime East Whiteland Township resident who passed away on September 18th following an auto accident. Larry and his wife Kathleen were the most frequent attendees to board meetings during my tenure here. And Larry was an independent electrician. And I got to know Larry when he and his sons had done some electrical work at my house, and we talked about hockey, goalie equipment for his son Nick, and we traded hard to get IPAs. Larry was one of those pillars of the community that we were fortunate to know. I asked Peter Fixler, who was one of Larry's good neighbors, to add some comments and thoughts from his perspective.
Thank you, Scott. I was just going to start by recounting on September 18th. I read this with a very heavy heart, as Larry was a good friend. But on September 18th, Larry Stouffer passed away from his injuries incurred from a head-on collision with a drunk driver. Larry was traveling home with his family that evening, and all were severely injured, but Larry's injuries were terminal. Larry was somewhat of a fixture here at township meetings and was a deeply involved resident of East Whiteland Township and a tireless advocate for his neighbors. On a personal note, Larry was a friend of my family, a neighbor. And someone I shared time with. He was one of the best neighbors one could ask for. He was always a friendly face I enjoyed seeing at a township meeting or around town. I know my family and the Great Valley community will miss him. Our deepest condolences go out to his family.
Thank you, Peter. Certainly on behalf of the township and the board and the staff, our sympathies and condolences go out to Larry's wife, Kathleen, and children, Elizabeth, Nick, and Michael, and his entire family. I'll also add that there is a celebration of life for Larry at Cabrini University on October 15th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, if you care to attend. Let us have a moment of silence for Larry Stouffer. Thank you. I'd invite anyone here who would like to tell Larry's story or provide any comments if you would like, or on Zoom, if you feel comfortable to do that. Our second resident that we would like to mourn tonight is Everett Beauregard, who was a 2017 graduate from Great Valley High School and who passed away tragically on September 22nd in Philadelphia. I didn't know him, but through the Great Valley family, I have only heard great, wonderful things about him. He was a National Merit Scholar, studied political science at Temple, was a Boy Scout, bird watcher, baseball player, campaign worker. And certainly on behalf of our community, our condolences go out to his parents, Leslie and Eric, and his sister Ashley. Would you like to add? Okay. All right. Again, if we can take a moment of silence for Everett. Thank you. And if anyone has any comments, please come forward. Moving on to board briefings. Our executive sessions were held today, October 12th at 5 o'clock, and we discussed personal, legal, and real estate issues. Next is 2B. I wanted to give everyone an update on Catalyst Billboard. As you may recall, we had unauthorized tree and vegetation removal back in July, 4th weekend, resulting in a fine penalty of $161,000 from the Township to Catalyst, which they have paid within the cure period. And also they received an additional $90,000 penalty from PennDOT for damage incurred in the right-of-way along 202. A few weeks ago, we were advised that a Catalyst person had submitted a permit application known as the M700 to request removal or tree trimming of 12 mature trees along the PennDOT's right-of-way along the south side of 202, just before the billboard signs. The Township opposed it, and our residents also reached out and contacted PennDOT, and the permit has been pulled. However, seems like with billboards there's always a however. The ownership has been transferred to a company called Outfront, based out of Manhattan, New York. And we wouldn't be surprised if they now resubmit the same application to do the same type of work. We're trying to begin a dialogue with them. We will keep you informed. We've got more billboard business. An update for an ongoing zoning hearing board challenge by Lamar Billboard that we had been fighting for quite some time. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court announced today that and denied the petition for allowance of appeal. And I'll ask Bernadette to give us some more details on that issue.
Yes, and Scott, just to let you know, we haven't yet confirmed with Catalyst that they've closed on the property and sold it yet, but we're expecting that will occur shortly.
Right. Again, when I when I see that this Catalyst sign has been removed from the sign, and I see out front on the billboard, I kind of assume that it has occurred. But thank you. Clarifying.
And Lamar had filed a petition, or I'm sorry, an application for zoning relief that had gone up through the court system, from the zoning hearing board to the trial court to the Commonwealth Court. And when you file, the Commonwealth Court decided in favor of the township and not in favor of Lamar. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court does not have to take every case, so you have to ask as the appellant if the Supreme Court would consider taking the case, called a petition for allowance of appeal. The Supreme Court has declined to take the case, so that is the end of the zoning case.
Is there any chance that they could come back with some other legally to?
They always have the right to come back in and ask for another variance and start the process over.
Okay.
Yeah.
Martin, you have a question?
Good evening. Martin Lutz, 4 Lap Road. 2 questions in regard to the Catalyst situation. Has the owner of the billboard requested the township to remove any vegetation on township land under the terms of the lease agreement?
They have not asked us to remove anything at this point in time.
The second question deals with the actual M700 permit request that Catalyst submitted to remove additional vegetation, which was along the Valley Creek and adjacent to township parkland. I believe we might be overlooking something with this M700 permit request. Obviously, it deals with vegetation control, but the applicant, I know that this M700's been withdrawn, but we have to keep this in mind going forward if it's resubmitted by the new owner. There's some fine print in here where it says remedial action proposed. And aside from the vegetation part of it, it says changes to the devices, that is the billboard, itself to include raising, lowering, or adjusting. Okay, that opens another door, because you just can imagine if somehow, I know we have an ordinance in the township, and there was a public hearing that dictated the size of the sign, the height of the sign, et cetera. But, you know, they're going to be introducing this vis-a-vis PennDOT. I think we should be aware of it.
Yes, actually, Zach and I had spoken about that, that if they wanted to change the height of the sign, I believe they would actually have to end up going to the zoning hearing board. But yeah, we did notice that on the M700.
Okay.
Yeah.
You just imagine that sign going up another 20, 30 feet. Their argument would be, well, we'll just put it over the trees. We won't remove them. So that said, I know later on under item 10 on the consent agenda, there's an item talking about authorization to oppose PennDOT permit application M700 for any future tree removal pertaining to billboard located on township property on Conestoga Road. So I don't know if you'd want to expand that in terms of what I just indicated or not.
It probably should have said on PennDOT property, because the M700 pertains to PennDOT's right-of-way area. And the reason why we've proceeded with that aspect is that, again, we're kind of anticipating that the new owner, if there is a new, in fact, owner, is likely to come forth with the same permit application. So we want to be very clear and upfront that we as a board, Peter, Rich, and I, are opposing such an application.
Good.
So,
Having it as part of the consent agenda avoids the need to hold an emergency meeting also. So it's already in place.
Okay, good. I commend you, though, on the actions of the board and township staff on this. Thank you.
thanks. And we documented the status of the trees early on, and we have followed up with a drone run on Tuesday. So there's our trees documented. There's 12 trees, 12 mature trees that I think Martin has indicated that could be upwards to 144 years old that you're seeing there. Tuesday. Obviously, that's looking south, and that's Mill Lane, the crossroad, firehouse on the left. If you can't read it, it's saying heading north. It's 401 on the right and 202 on the left. And that's two good-looking guys down in the parking lot. Thanks, Zach. We also commending all the people that did respond to a Facebook page request by a few folks here in the audience to send a note to PennDOT. I think that had a positive impact, and it's great to see everyone's involvement in a situation like this. We can push, and we are pushing, but it really does help if you folks get involved in issues like this as well. So we thank you. Moving forward on, well, are there any questions, Donna, from the public? Anyone from the audience? You all set, John?
Yes, sorry, I clarify something.
Okay. Next, item 2D is an update on the sewer sale from John Nagel.
Oh, I'm sorry. If this mic is working or not. Just back on the Route 30 corridor, just a quick update. We actually, township officials met within the last month with the federal government representatives from the RAISE grant and basically gave us our corrective action needed to make our application for 2023 better. So we're incorporating those recommendations into our proposed application for the coming year. That's really all that's new on Route 30. The sewer system sale, again, it's been appealed, and it's a 12 to 18 month period before the Commonwealth Court entertains the appeal. That's all I really have new to mention on the sewer sale. And if I may, at this point, there's really nothing new on the campus master plan. We're hoping to have something at the next board meeting about that.
Thanks, John.
Sure.
If I can add for everyone in here, we applied for a Route 30 $25 million infrastructure grant to widen and improve Route 30 to make it safer. It was for the portion of Route 30 between Church Road and Plainbrook. We were not awarded the grant, but we did make it into the final group. There were 166 projects that were awarded the grant monies. Pennsylvania only received 2, and 50% of the grants were awarded to what they called, how did they describe the lower?
I believe there's one, in both cases, they were in neighborhoods that were in economic need, but also high accident impact areas. One was the Hill District out in Pittsburgh,
Yep.
and the other one was multiple intersections in some of the rougher parts of Philadelphia.
Okay. And I'll also say that we ended up, John, myself, Delta Consultants, and our traffic engineer, Chris Williams, were on a debriefing with Washington and pertaining to this grant, and we learned a lot about what went right and a few items that went wrong. So we intend on filing for that grant next year in hopes of helping again improve the safety and walkability and the enhancement of that Route 30 corridor. I'll also add that the final decision was sitting in front of Undersecretary Pete Buttigieg's desk. He was looking at it, but it did not get the approval. There was a lot of effort put in by everyone here as well to get that application in. It was substantial. Next, I will turn this over to John Nagel and Rich Orlo, who have worked for quite a long time with Joe Rubino, who is retiring only after 35 years. Rich?
Yes, Joe Rubino, thank you for coming tonight. We want to recognize and thank Joe for his many, many years of service to this township. Most recently as chair of the fire board, the Volunteer Fire Association Board. Before that, longtime resident, served on the zoning hearing board for many years and involved just generally in many township matters. We thank you. We all know how hard it is to find volunteers and good, solid volunteers. And we would like to have many more like Joe. So thank you. And John has a few words to say before we present you with your award.
Well-deserved award. I got here about 7 or 8 years ago when I got to meet Joe and also Rob Fenza, which was the tag team that helped build the great structure down the driveway known as the fire station for East Whiteland Township and also for Charlestown Township. It started out, I believe, as Friends of the Fire Company and did a great job fundraising as well as getting in-kind contributions to building and constructing that magnificent building. This is the 4th combination department that I've been involved in, and I'm very proud of the way that this fire board has helped steer the fire and EMS operations in East Whiteland and Charlestown Township. We deal with a lot of very difficult issues when it comes to life safety, and Joe has got the vision and the leadership to see this through to this point, and he's done a magnificent job in leading that group, and it's a very, very difficult job to undertake. Joe, you'll be sorely missed with your leadership, and I want to wish you the best in the future in your next role. And I think we have something to give to you as well as maybe take a photo opportunity.
Yes, I have a plaque I'll read. In October 2022, the East Whiteland Township Board of Supervisors staff Residents and businesses thanks Joe Rubino for the many years of outstanding leadership and vision as chair of the East Whiteland Township Volunteer Fire Association Board of Directors. Thank you, Joe.
Our party starts about 11 o'clock, Joe, after we get out of here for you.
Right.
Okay?
If we can stay awake.
So I'm talking to an applicant. Can I take 2 minutes?
Sure, John, go ahead.
Scott, thank you for letting me speak again. Did not fully explain the Route 30 corridor and the RAISE program. We're actually hosting the Deputy Secretary of DCD, the Department of Community and Economic Development, down at the firehouse tomorrow morning. First, to thank DCD for financing a 5-year financial plan that's really put us back on track financially, but more importantly, has supported the RAISE grant application on our behalf and is helping with getting grant money from PennDOT, $3 million on that project. And so we're looking forward to continuing that relationship and building upon it. So,
I should also add that we're also meeting at the end of October with the Chester County Commissioners and the planning folks who want to talk more in detail on a local level about this project. So we're looking forward to that as well as far as assistance and help and guidance from them. Zach and Steve, I guess we'll move on to item 2G in terms of the updated response to the remediation action plan supplied to us recently by DEP for Bishop Tube.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. I really don't have much to report other than to let the folks in the audience know that aren't aware that the DEP released their, we'll say, long-awaited remedial action plan. I believe it was the 21st of last month. It was somewhere around that time. The township has not had the chance to completely review it, digest it, understand it, and comment on it, but we have already set the wheels in motion, and I had a meeting last week with BSTI, who assisted us in making comments on their draft plan, and Steve Hahn, our environmental attorney, who assisted us in that process as well. And so the next step is to engage BSTI. They'll be providing us with a proposal, and then we'll get them moving on that action. And ultimately, I believe it's the board's intent to hold a public meeting for discussion in front of our residents and property owners and other interested parties. Just one other note, we do intend to request a second TEG grant. We believe we're entitled to it, and so we're gonna make that request. So hopefully we'll be able to receive another $50,000 from the state.
And that will fund the cost of the consultant.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have added that. Yeah, it'll fund either all the cost or some of the cost. Last time it didn't quite cover all the cost.
Steve, I don't know if you've had any contact with DEP, but their website kind of indicates that they intend on having a public meeting sometime here in the fall to talk about their mediation, but it's not very clear when and any details.
I have not had any contact with DEP. I can reach out to them and I'll find out about that.
Yeah, maybe if we can get a little better time frame and let people know so we have an idea.
Will do.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Any questions from the audience?
Of course. Deborah Mobile, 42 Village Way. I've said this repeatedly. I am not a scientist. So all of this paperwork, jargon, reporting takes a lot for me to digest. But so far, what I've read and looked at, I haven't really seen any substantial changes in the updated proposal from the DEP. One of the things I was looking for was I can't seem to find answers to my questions, the questions of many of the other residences that we were forced to make hastily at the hearing when they decided to go ahead and hold a hearing like a month out from releasing the paperwork, rather than meet with us and answer our questions. If you recall, the township was told that we would have answers to all of our questions and comments after the comment process was concluded, that they were going to get back to us, answer those, and I can't seem to find answers to the questions that I ask so far. So, needless to say, I didn't expect much better after almost a quarter of a century of waiting for an answer from them. And you can understand how I'm upset and concerned. I am glad to hear that the township is planning on having a meeting with the residents. I think that we really need that because I want to hear what our consultants have to say. They were very helpful for me in digesting, even though I rely a lot, yes, on the Delaware Riverkeeper Network to tell me a lot of things. I also listen to everyone. I do. And they had a way of presenting things with pictures on the screen that, as a former school teacher, I got. I understood that. I'm also concerned that the meeting that the state is going to have with us is going to end up being another hearing. Because the last time we were told, we were left with the impression that they were going to meet with us beforehand, and suddenly that meeting became a hearing. So if they're going to go right to a hearing rather than meet with the public and meet with the township, citizens to ask questions, then we need to really move quickly, don't we? Thank you very much for listening. Take care. And thank you for speaking about our friend, Larry. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Deb. Don, any comments on Zoom? And then Steve, I guess I'll just add that there is on Thursday at 6 o'clock here in this building, there is a hybrid meeting for an EPA meeting pertaining to the Malvern TCE site, which is based on North Phoenixville Pike. But that will be here and it will be Zoomed, so you can listen in on that if you want to.
What is the purpose of that Malvern TCE discussion? What's the content, the subject?
I think the EPA is going to be talking about the existing condition, and I believe updates on any remediation that's going on there or plan to?
Yes, Scott, I think that's generally answer. I'm not really aware of the specifics. They didn't share them with us, but I'm sure they'll provide an update on their findings to date. I do believe that additional study needs to be done, maybe some additional monitoring wells, but I'm not 100% sure about that. We'll find out tomorrow evening.
Okay, I'm Carol Armstrong. I live in Charlestown on Howell Road. No, I asked because they have to study that site every 5 years, and they put out that last report, I think, in 2020. So this is 2 years already, and that's why I'm puzzled. Are they discussing the 2020 findings? And I don't know, have they ever given you reports before? But they do this every 5 years.
We do receive those 5-year reports.
Okay.
I
mean,
can't.
do they meet with you every 5 years? So that's why I'm wondering if this is something different.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I have been in contact with Mr. Gallagher, Tim Gallagher, who is the EPA representative for this project. I'm in contact with him periodically, but it's always when, you know, they're doing something and there's something new coming up. So I'm not quite sure how to respond to you. Again, we do receive those reports, but I'm not quite sure what's prompting them to hold this meeting.
All right, thank you.
Moving on to section 3, board motion and resolutions. We'll start off with, last month we had a long, late meeting, and there was a procedural faux pas in which we did not approve the consent agenda, so I would like to start off here with a motion to approve the September 13th consent agenda. Would you please?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the September 13th consent agenda.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
We're official now. Chris, if you can tell us about the grant application?
And so the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency sent out their grant notice for this year, and we decided we would try to go for a grant to get license plate reader cameras. We were thinking about getting them as discussed earlier in the year, and it is quite an undertaking, but what the license plate readers do is cover intersections, and it records all vehicles that go through the intersection by license plate, and you can also search by description of vehicle and things of that nature. It's not something that can be done, I'll use the term willy-nilly. You can't just say, I want to find out who all went through this intersection. When you do have the cameras on, all they do is record it, just like your license plate would. So if an officer or an entity wants to search that, they have to go through the strict standards that PennDOT created with penalties if you abuse the privilege. So ultimately, we're looking for up to 10 intersections at 4 cameras apiece, which would cover pretty much 2 lanes in each direction of the cameras and of the road. And there's a bunch of the other cameras throughout Chester County. You would actually be surprised if you actually knew how many there are, but this area right here is probably like a break-off point where if you have someone who is on a silver alert or something, someone's mother or father, takes off in a car or something, and you don't know where they were or are, you could find them, and you could literally track them by going through this camera system. And a lot of crimes have been solved, kidnappings have been solved, murders have been solved in Westchester as recently as a couple of years. And so it has a lot of positive things that make it a worthwhile investment. So we're looking to get $400,000. That's a big ask, but we have a lot of support, and we're hoping that we get that. And that only covers probably for 2 years. So we would have to see how we're going to go about completing the term of the contract with the LPR company. So right now, that's what we're doing. We're looking for $400,000 to cover 10 intersections, and if we get something less, then we'll just cover less intersections. But the more we can cover, like normally exits from the township, they would probably be somewhere around 202 and 30, 29 and 30, and then a couple spots on Route 29, and then maybe somewhere where 401. So that's what it's about. It's a very efficient way to be able to go backwards and find out if somebody was in a certain spot at a certain time.
What period of time is preserved on the, I guess, hard drive?
They preserve a long time because it goes through a master server system. So it's done through multiple states, and the bigger it gets, the bigger the pool for what you're looking for. So when they look to, like, for gang activity or human trafficking, they can literally go back for long periods of time and just put in descriptions of cars for an incident, and it'll tell you all the cars that went through that looked that certain way during a certain time period.
And this is to own these cameras, or do we just lease them? Or
We're actually owning the cameras. So we're probably leasing the system
the
that
software
records it all.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good.
Chris, is the data housed here at one of our sites, or does it go to county level?
No, it's going to be housed through an access through PennDOT, but in the past it's been housed through Camden, so that's kind of like a moving target. Like I said, the more they get, the more areas that are going to house it. So right now we could just purchase a method of just accessing the information on everyone else's cameras, but after a while, it's, people, you can't literally work it the way you need to work it as if you owned like the cameras in your area. Plus, we could see if we have a crime at a hotel or anything else, we can go right to there and find out what cars left at a certain time or anything like that. So it's pretty helpful, and it's hard to abuse because it's just like license plates, Police officers can't just run license plates without some form of penalty or something. If you just run them for the heck of it, you can't run your girlfriend, your boyfriend, somebody you like or dislike. It just can't happen without a penalty. So
We're excluded, right?
yeah, what's the description of your cars? Let me. Rich is going to be hard.
Yeah, Rich.
He's got
A demo.
And let me tell you, Rich did do it.
I wasn't there. No.
But that's it. So it's a pretty big project if we can get it. But a lot of other parts of the county are looking for us because we're like the drop-off point, where once a car comes in here, we don't have any, and the car just disappears from there, and you have to start looking further out to try to find out where the car went after that.
Probably would have really helped capture the sound last summer with Tyler at the Wawa. They probably would have been able to track him leaving here.
They actually tracked that for a while.
They did.
So, yeah. So that's actually how that was solved. Part of it was
Through
how
this
it was
program.
solved. Yeah.
Great. Any questions?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Any questions from the audience? Would you like to make a motion?
Sure. Motion to ratify the grant application to PA Commission on Crime and Delinquency for the license plate readers, up to $400,000.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and passes.
Thank you.
Moving on to one of the fun aspects of September and October, the budget process. That never seems to end.
Every year.
No, amazing how that is, isn't it? John, this is going to be your last year doing this.
36th budget in my career.
Really?
Yes.
Gonna miss
I
it?
don't sound sentimental, do I?
You gonna miss it?
No.
Okay, so you want, I guess probably, I'll hand it over to you, Anusha, in terms of the workshops.
Well, we're slightly behind in preparation because we want to get this right and make it a effective process for the board and an efficient process. So my selfish suggestion would be towards the mid to latter part of both the week of the 17th and the 24th, like a Wednesday or a Thursday. So
As far
we're
as
talking
next-
maybe
yes.
19th and 20th, or well, either the 19th or the 20th, and either the 26th or 27th.
As far as the 19th and 20th, I am on call for jury duty. So I would love to schedule this budget session, and I will have an excuse. But I can't guarantee it. How long, what time? How long do we need, you think, each day?
Like we can be very efficient, but it's probably going to take a good 2 to 3 hours for each session. We'll try to be as efficient and give you as much information in advance without having to inundate you with detail. You should you.
Any chance for Tuesday instead of? I mean, probably Tuesday or Thursday is better.
Yeah, sorry, Tuesday morning, there's a contract negotiations with one of our unions.
Okay.
I can change it, but preference would be Thursday then.
I mean, we can shoot for Thursday and I'll let you know.
John, we've got a funding meeting on 10 o'clock on Thursday the 20th, unless that got changed.
That is also correct. I can certainly change the AFSCME meeting. I just wanted to point that out, that's all. There's never a good day.
Yeah. Tuesday I'm wide open after 9:30.
Same. Tuesday, clear all day. You have the contract meeting in the morning and do this in the afternoon?
Tuesday.
On Tuesday, that would be great.
Yep. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would work.
Tuesday, 18th.
Peter?
I'm there. My mic's not working, I'm there.
Well, there was two on, only two can work, but it's fine.
I'm off.
You're off.
I'm off too.
I'm there
You're only
for Tuesday.
The 18th at 1:30?
The 18th at 1:30.
Okay. Then the following week, we need one of those, one date.
Tuesday at 1:30, 25th.
That's fine. I'm okay with that.
That work for you?
I'll make that work, yes.
All right.
25th,
Same time?
same time? Okay, 25th at 1:30. Thank you very much. Those meetings are open to the public and will be advertised as such. Just as a teaser, We already have a preliminary budget, and it has about a $500,000 surplus, so we're already out of the gate in a good place.
Good, good. Donna Weichert, you're up.
Okay, so we're asking for the board to ratify the purchase of Civic Rec Park and Recreation online service. It's software. We currently use Civic Plus for our website, and this is a software that will actually allow residents and non-residents to book all the different parks online. They'll be able to see the availability of everything and be able to pay and book online without needing any assistance from us, which will be a huge help.
Just out of curiosity, how far in advance can you book something on a system like this? Do you know?
That I don't know. I can find out. I'm not sure. This isn't going to roll out probably actually until spring because
Spring.
yes. So I'll have time to find out. I can ask that. I would imagine. I would imagine 6 months, but I can definitely ask.
Okay. Seems like it makes a lot of sense.
It does. It's very time consuming, and it's all right now, it's done manually. So somebody will call and you have to look on a calendar, and then you have to write their name in, then you have to send them forms, and everything will be online, so it'll take all that away.
All right. Rich, you want to make a motion?
Sure, make the motion to ratify the Civic Rec Park and Recreation Project online reservation software. Startup $13,088, annual $6,300.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes.
And then I have, the next one I have, it's ratify the cleaning contract to citywide facilities. We've switched our cleaners on site. As you can see, they're actually out there cleaning now.
Hello, can you come to my game outreach and
Give me a minute here.
all the Fifth High School?
Okay, I just removed them. Sorry. Give me 1 second. Okay. That was somebody that got through, so I just removed them. Where was I at? Okay, so the cleaning, we're just ratifying a cleaning contract of new cleaners that we brought on board. They started actually on Monday. And they follow the guidelines of under like, I think the total annual cost is $21,888. So it falls under no bids.
Okay. Peter, could you make a motion?
Gladly. Like the make a motion to ratify the cleaning contract with Citywide Facility Solutions for cleaning the various buildings on the campus site for an annual contract rate of $21,000, $888.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Passes.
Okay.
Our mower salesman, John
Yeah.
Neal.
Well, next item, very simple, just ratify the purchase of the replacement mower, replacing one of the 5 that we have that is well past its prime.
I'm curious with the amount of mowing that these machines do throughout the year, how long do they last?
We have, the one that this one replaces is a 1999, so it's been around a long time.
So we've got some really good mechanics keeping these things running.
Yeah, they're working a little too much on them, so we're starting to get rid of some of the older ones in the fleet, so.
Okay, cool.
They look like they're from 1999.
Right. Yeah, there's 3 of them that are pretty old. The other 2 are in much better shape.
They don't owe us a dime.
Sounds good. Rich, want to make a motion?
Yeah, motion to ratify the purchase of the replacement mower, 31 horsepower, 72-inch deck, $13,985.30.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes. John, if you could kind of give us an overview on the investment options here.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, with all due respect, in the respect the time for the folks that are here waiting for other items, this is more of an administrative matter after further review, and I'd ask that we move this to other business.
We will move it to other business. Thank you. And Anusha, we've got fire relief payment.
$30,331 last month, and we need to distribute to hire volunteer relief association within 60 days, which we'll be doing this month. So.
And I'm sorry, what was the dollar amount?
$130,331.64.
Okay. And this is an annual event, correct?
Yes, we
So
get this.
nothing unusual on this.
No, it's according to Act 205. We receive this fund based on the population of the municipality, 50% based on the municipality and population, and 50% based on the real estate value. So they decide how many people the fire department, volunteer fire department serves, and they allocate that money based on that.
Okay. Peter, can you make a motion?
Gladly. I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2022 volunteer relief payment to East Whiteland for the Volunteer Fire Relief Association of, I believe, $130,031.64.
$130,331.
Oh, I missed the 3. $331 and change.
Okay. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
And passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Usha. Steve, if you can give us information on this resolution.
It's a resolution that will support a grant application to the DCNR for funding for Backton Hill Park. I'm calling them Phase 1A for lack of a better term, improvements. Excuse me, the DCNR has additional funds available for this grant program. It's the C2P2 grant program, and it's money that the state received from the ARPA program, the same program that we receive funds for. So again, they have additional monies available, and they're dispersing them throughout the Commonwealth via this program. So this is just simply a resolution that will accompany the application that will be due later this month.
Okay.
Do we ask for a specific amount, or are they just allocated however they allocate it?
We will ask for a specific amount. We're still working on that with our consultants and getting the designs ready and the cost estimates ready, but okay. The application is due the 27th, and we'll have it in by then, and we'll advise you of the amount.
Sure. Okay, great.
Any questions?
No, none.
You wanna?
Yeah, motion to approve, well, whatever resolution it turns out to be, to submit the grant application, DCNR, for the C2P2 program for Backton Hill Park, Phase 1A improvements.
And a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
And passes. And Steve, you're still up on Backton Hill improvements.
Yeah, these are additional costs for additional improvements for the current phase, Phase 1, much of which is being completed now. If folks have gone out to see the new park on Backton Hill Road, it's a little hard to find yet. It's 14 Backton Hill. We will be erecting a sign, and that will make it much easier to find the park. Some of these improvements were anticipated, others were not. They are in no particular order. Fence along the property line with one of our neighbors' medical home care, which has been added for screening and safety purposes. Fencing along the storm basins that are within the park, which have been added for safety. A retaining wall along the property line with medical home care for the first 80 or 90 feet at the park entrance, added due to vertical slope for stabilization and low maintenance. Planting of trees this fall. Trees have been planted, but we're looking to plant additional trees above and beyond the contract. Benches for along the trail. We're going to purchase 25 benches. This purchase was planned. And picnic tables for the pavilion, and that's, Peter, that's 20 tables. I told you about half that number, so I was way off. Anyway, so that purchase was planned as well. So all these costs are pretty well known except for the retaining wall, which we estimated at $50,000. We did just receive today a quote from the contractor. It's significantly more than the 50. I would recommend for this evening that we just table the retaining wall, look at some options, and ask the board to authorize the cost for the fencing, for the tree planting, and the benches and the picnic tables this evening. And once we take a look at the options for the wall, we'll probably discuss it at one of our upcoming budget meetings.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'll add that the medical supply company is cost sharing the cost of the fence 50-50 with us. And we hope to plant anywhere from maybe 40 to 50 trees this fall, I think is the number that we're looking at. We're identifying those trees now. But with that said, Peter, would you like to make a motion?
I would definitely like to make a motion to approve the expenditures for additional improvements to Backton Hill Park for benches, picnic tables, fence installation, and fence materials along the storm basin and retaining wall installation, and tree planting for $180,000.
I'll add just to note that we are excluding the retaining wall at this point in time.
Excluding the retaining wall.
Yeah, right. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Mr. Barner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Congratulations on your nuptial last week.
Thank you. Thank you. I was looking for a camera to show off my ring. Thank you.
What took you so long?
How long you got? I'm at a loss for words for one of maybe 3 times in my life. You got me, Scott. Thank you. Item K on the agenda is to approve the signing of an agreement with Norfolk Southern for preliminary engineering services related to the Patriots Path Sidewalk Extension Project. In August, the board authorized staff and McMahon to not only previously to proceed with design, but to issue a letter authorizing Norfolk Southern to accrue expenses in part to initiate review of the preliminary engineering and to prepare this agreement that's now been drafted. Basically, it just says that we'll reimburse them for their review of our project, similar to how we handle similar things with development applications.
Thank you. Any questions? Rich, would you like to make a motion?
How long do you think it's going to take for them to complete their review?
That is a very good question that I do not have a very good answer to.
Okay, it's all right. They probably wouldn't tell you the truth anyway.
I could give you a number. We have initiated, preparing drafts of materials for them to dig into. They sub out like we do to, I believe it's to AECom. So when we initially submitted, they said they'd put us on the list.
Sure.
So that didn't really give me a whole lot of encouragement. But
Okay.
we will get, once we submit it, we'll try to get an update back to you on timing.
Okay, great. Motion to approve signing the agreement with Norfolk and Southern for the preliminary engineer services for the Patriots Path, $13,475.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And passes. And moving on, we've got the stormwater basin for Anthony.
Hello, Al Vanatilli with Aero Consulting. We're here for redesign of the stormwater basin. During Gorski's research on the project, they found that there was rock there and required blasting, so we cannot do an infiltration basin as was originally designed. So we're going to be needing to redesign those as MRC type basins, manage release concept basins, and we're going to need to do the cost to redesign that is $15,250. I hate to throw a wrench in things, but I also was asked today by Gorski about designing the retaining wall adjacent to the parking lot, the upper parking lot along the access driveway for the police there. And they need a detailed structural design of the retaining wall in order to price that out for the construction costs. And that.
Yeah, I think to move forward on that, we would probably need a proposal in writing.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah, sorry.
No problem. I just wanted to mention it.
Okay.
It's not a new retaining wall, right? That was always in the plans.
Yes, it was on the plan.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
So Peter,
I have no question.
can you make a motion?
I would love to make a motion. I'd love to make a motion to authorize additional work to redesign the stormwater basin related to the campus master plan for the police department to the amount of $15,200, you said, Al?
$15,250.
$15,250.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes.
Next item, as you recall, a couple months ago, we requested to authorize a signal maintenance agreement for the Route 29, Route 30 island beautification. That was at the request of PennDOT as part of our permit, the HOP permit. And after they issued the permit, they realized they asked us to sign the wrong document. So they're asking us to do a condition statement, basically, which eliminates the signal maintenance agreement and turns it into a landscape maintenance agreement. And that's going to, once it's signed and notarized, we will upload it and submit it as an amendment to the permit.
Okay. John Neal, any issue from your standpoint?
No, that's
Basic. Okay.
What's our current timing to put that in these days? Curious, just curious. I would love to not look at that concrete.
No, we put it out to bid and we had no interest, so
Oh,
we're
really?
looking at
No
it again,
interest.
no bids at all. We thought somebody would at least throw a high number at it to get an idea, but
Right.
we're reevaluating how we're gonna put that out.
Okay.
Not sure what we're gonna do, but over the winter, we're gonna get
What-
back to that project.
What kind of contractors were proposed? Landscape contractors, basically?
It was, we had a lot of people show interest in it.
Right.
They didn't ask many questions, but no bids.
Yeah.
It could have been the time of year if they thought they had to have this done going into the winter. So we were gonna probably regroup and maybe recommend rebid over the winter.
It's not the biggest job in the world
No.
either, that's why.
No, it's a tough spot too.
Yeah. Okay.
So you want to
Sure.
put that into a motion?
Sure. Well, motion to approve and execute the condition statement required by PennDOT for Route 29, the island at Route 29 and Route 30, island beautification.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to public hearing, I will turn this over to Bernadette Kearney for a conditional use hearing.
Yes, we have a scheduled public hearing tonight, and I'm going to read the notice. Notice is hereby given that on October 12th, 2022, at 7 p.m., at the East Whiteland Township Municipal Building, located at 209 Conestoga Road, Fraser, PA, the Board of Supervisors of East Whiteland Township shall hold a public hearing on and may take action and vote upon the conditional use application of Fetters Mill Community Association, Inc. The applicant is requesting an amendment of the conditional use decision and order dated January 20th, 2015, which amended condition number 7 of the original conditional use order dated April 7th, 1999. The applicant is requesting to further revise condition number 7 as to the landscape plantings on the northwestern, northeastern, eastern, southern, and western perimeters of the tract, which is located at Sidley Road, Lack Road, and Betters Mill Road in the R1 low density residential zoning district. The open space lands includes UPI numbers 42-4-5.2A, 42-4-5.2B, 42-4-5.2C, 42-4-52.3D, and 42-4-52.2E. We're going to mark a series of exhibits, which I've also provided to applicant's counsel, Gina Gerber from Riley Riper. Township T1 will be the letter and conditional use application. Township T2, the 1999 conditional use order noted on the plan. T3, the 2015 conditional use decision. T4, in focus planning, the buffers layout. T5, the in focus planning buffers details plan. T6 is the pictures of South Fetters Mill. 7 is pictures of Northeast Fetters Mill. T8 is the original Fetters Mill landscaping plan. T9 is proposed amended condition. T10 is a letter to the Daily News with the legal notice. T11 is emails dated July 25th and September 23rd, 2022 to the Township Planning Commission. T12 is a letter to the neighbors. T13, the affidavit of posting of the property. T14, the proof of publication. And T15 was a board summary. And I'll turn it over to Gina at this point.
Thank you very much. My name is Gina Gerber. I'm an attorney with Riley Riper. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, the Fetters Mill Community Association, this evening. And before we get started, if you'll allow me just a couple minutes, I do have some pre-marked exhibits for the applicant that I'll pass around to the board. And I believe the township also has an electronic copy. I don't know if, to the extent that that's feasible, that might be helpful for the audience as well.
Thanks.
Do I have your email?
Thank you. Great. So a little bit of housekeeping before we get into this. I did realize as we were putting this together that there were 2 UPI numbers that were identified in the application that there was a typo. So there's a little bit of a correction here. So where you identified UPI number 42-4-52.3D, the UPI number that is the open space area is 42-4-5.2. D as in dog. D as in dog. Yep. And the second UPI, which was identified as 42-4-52.2 E as in egg. The UPI number for the open space is 42-4-5.2 E as an egg. And I believe I checked the notices that were sent out, and they were sent to the appropriate parties in proximity to those UPI numbers.
Okay.
We're okay as far as that's. So to bring the board up to speed, this is an existing single-family residential community known as Fetters Mill. This was developed in around the early 2000s. The original development plan was approved in 2000. The original conditional use related to that development plan was approved in 1999. And this is the reason why we filed a conditional use application, and this is the application that you're reviewing this evening. In 1999, there was a condition that was put in place that I'll refer to as Condition 7 that required perimeter landscape plantings all around the outside of the Fetters Mill. It was a very dense evergreen landscape planting buffer that ultimately failed miserably. The trees are dead. The Community Association took some initiative in 2015, came back to the township, asked for an amendment of that original Condition 7 to come up with some sort of solution to try and work through the problem they were facing. That Condition 7 was amended in 2015, still required the planting of a dense evergreen buffer. However, they were spaced slightly further apart. Again, at this time, we're seeing a failing of that evergreen buffer as well. So my client has taken a proactive approach to this. The community would like to see that perimeter buffer be replaced and actually function as a screen the way it was intended to in the first place. So we are here this evening with a very skilled landscape consultant that is here to testify as well as to a new plan that's going to be put in place for some areas of this community immediately, and to advise of a plan going forward so that as those perimeter buffer areas decline or fail in any respect, we have a plan in place for the community to implement that will produce a more aesthetically pleasing, but also more effective and more effective landscape buffer that will mature for decades rather than a few years at a time. So we are here this evening requesting an amendment of that Condition 7, and we'll get into the details of what that amendment looks like as we go through the hearing this evening. I do have 2 witnesses with me this evening, the president of the Community Association, Michael Cortese, as well as our Michael Cortese, C-O-R-T-E, S-E, as well as our landscape consultant, John Hosbach, H-O-S-B-A-C-H. And for efficiency, I'd like to have them sworn in at the beginning, and we'll get into the testimony. At any point you can't hear, could you please state your address for the record?
Mike Cortese, and I live at McCoy Court in Fetters Mill.
And what's your relationship to the applicant?
I'm clearly not the skilled landscape architect. I'm the president of the Homeowners Association. I've been at Fetters Mill for about 18 years. President, part of the board for about 12 years.
And are you authorized to appear here this evening I'm going to of the Fetters Mill. Is the area that's the subject of the application outlined in red?
Yes.
Does this represent all of the open space that has?
Yes.
Is the community surrounded by other residential uses with the exception of the western boundary, which is on certain
Correct.
I'm going to refer your attention to 4, which is a deed of dedication for the open space recorded on of the open space property.
Yes,
Property located.
it is.
Tell the board a little bit of why we're here this evening.
Yeah, so ever since joining Fetters Mill, I had friends on the board. So that's 2004. We recognized from 2004 that we had a tree problem. So I would go to board meetings and I would hear the members of the board talk about budgets and reserve plans and capital planning because we knew we had a tree problem. And that was only 4 years into the neighborhood. Needless to say, time has passed. We've talked to a number of arborists over the years. We hired an arborist to help us with these trees. We tried everything to try and defeat needle cast and some of the other issues that we've had. We tried feeding them. We tried to have audits and have the arborist walk the perimeter. So we spent over $60,000 trying to save these trees. We've replaced some over the years, and as you might imagine, this is a tree line. It surrounds a big portion of the property, not the entire property. So it's difficult to just pick a tree out and say that tree's dead and replace it. So now you have, 20-foot tree with an 8-foot tree. So we had all those challenges of whose house, gets the new trees and whose house gets to stand there looking at the dead stuff. So this year, early this year, my fellow board members who are here, we walk the property every couple of years, or twice a year, I should say. And that's been a tradition ever since I was on the board. And we looked at this tree line, and one of our neighbors, or one of the members of the community, pointed to her area, which is the northeastern section of Fetters Mill. And, she has younger children, and it's not only unsightly, but it's unsafe. The trees are so dead, some of them fall over by themselves. And then others have, it's really dangerous for kids to go in there to grab a ball or whatever. So we started in the northeast corner, and we looked at it, and we said, this is a big project. This is not something that I'm qualified to do, and it's not something that the board is qualified to do. So I grew up professionally in IT. When you don't have the right resources to do a project, you go get the right resources. So that's why we have Gina, and you'll hear from John in a second. And we wanted to work with the township to get this project going. We started in April with Ted Locker. Ted was of great assistance to help us understand the process. Gina is also a great assistance to help us understand the process. And we worked with Dave Kavanaugh, the township's consultant. So, over the past several months, we came up with a plan. John and Dave really kind of worked together with Zach to get that plan going. The bottom line with this plan is whatever side of the berm you're on, people want the trees close together. They want coverage. They don't want to see in, they don't want to see out. And that's what got us into this mess. So I don't understand, how fast every type of tree grows, and how wide they're going to get based on the species and how far apart we should plant them. So that's why we hired John. And John can inform you of the plan that we came up with. We think it's reasonable. I'm going to get hate mail from my neighbors outside the berm, and I'm going to get hate mail from neighbors inside the berm, so I'm going to blame it on John. We just want the right thing to do, because the right thing wasn't done years ago. The developer just smashed a bunch of trees in and did whatever he was told to do, and then left. But we want this to last, 20, 30, 40 years, not 10 years. So we think we have a plan that'll do that. Yes. Sure. Yeah, if you go to the next. So I'm going to walk you along the perimeter, starting at the entrance and go down Lap Road, which is predominantly going east, and then head north through a very dense natural vegetation area towards the northeast corner, and then I'll take you across the northern boundary. So this is Lap Road. My back is to Lap Road, and I just took a picture of the tree line. Go to the next slide. Again, I'm just walking down the path going east, and that's just another, view of the trees. Sometimes if you look at the trees from the outside, they kind of look okay, but if you look at the trees from the inside, they're all dead. They're just sticks. So this is what we call the eastern boundary. It's predominantly the eastern side of the property. And I'm about halfway in between. So there's 2 rows of homes in Fetters Mill. Between those rows of homes, there's a basin system. And I'm basically at the end of the basin system, and I'm looking north. So on the left are the perimeter trees up on a little bit of a berm. It's about 3 or 4 feet high. And on the right is the natural vegetation that's been there well before Fetters Mill community. You go to the next slide. So now I'm facing a little bit further up. I'm facing, I think that might be 29 Fetters Mill, but that's a Fetters Mill home. And you can see, a lot of dead trees, but that's the tree line on the berm. If you go to the next slide, I basically just turned around and I took a picture of the existing natural area that is still on Fetters Mill property. And it's really hard to tell where the property line is. I was back there today because we had the surveyors come out and put stakes in the ground so I can actually see where the line is, and it kind of goes right through this vegetation. Next slide. This is, I believe, behind 30 Fetters Mill, and on the right you can see where we did start to replant. This was probably, 5 or 6 years ago. If you remember, it was a few years ago. I think Dave was out there at the time. If you go to the next slide, I keep walking north, so this is the corner, and looking across to the neighbors on Thayer and Almy. Thayer, the road is called Thayer, Thayer, I believe, and Almy, Almy. I'm not sure if there are any more. Oh, yeah, I think there are a couple more slides. So that's just, a picture of the trees on the northern boundary. You could flip to the next slide. So now I'm looking due west, and the northern boundary is on my left. So there's a large piece of grassy area, which our landscapers often forget to cut, but the tree line goes to the right, and then it finishes at the end of the picture. And on the right are the homes that are on there. So it doesn't completely surround our, our property, but there's a good chunk of trees there. I think that's it. That's just a close-up of the remaining trees at the western side. But that's not necessarily the western boundary. There's another line of trees that go along Mill Road. That's the westernmost part, right across from Certainty and Saint-Gobain. I did, yes. They did. It did. To do this the right way, it wasn't done the right way by the developer. The trees, there's several, John can go into the reasons, there's several reasons why these trees failed. They were the same species, they were too shallow, they were too deep. Some of the trees actually in the berm fell over. They were planted so shallow that they just fell over. So they were improperly planted on a number of dimensions, and John can speak more about that.
Would you please state your name and your business address for the record?
Yes, my name is John Rockwell Hosbach, and we're located in Ridley Park, Pennsylvania. John Rockwell Hosbach, H-O-S, B as in boy, A-C-H.
Who's your employer and what is your position?
I am self-employed, and I am a registered consulting arborist, an urban forester, a qualified landscape appraiser, and I am a private consultant for both municipalities and private dwellings.
And is this your company profile and attached as Exhibit A10?
That is correct.
Can you give us just a brief rundown of?
Yes, I've been a private consultant for 25 years. I currently act as the consultant for Radnor Township, White Marsh Township, East Bradford Township, Newtown Township, and we work for about 340 homeowner associations, and we do some federal and state work as well.
John, you testified that you're certified arborist, registered consulting arborist, and landscape consultant in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
That is correct.
Have you been accepted as an expert arborist and testified before various other local boards, including this particular board?
I have indeed.
Are you familiar with the subject property proposal?
I am indeed.
And are you familiar with the applicable regulations of Whiteland Township? Are you familiar with the applicable regulations of the East Whiteland Township zoning ordinance?
Yes.
I'm going to ask that Mr. Hosbach be admitted as an expert arborist and landscaping consultant.
That's fine. That's good. Yeah, you're good.
Are you familiar with the prior conditions that were put in place as part of the previous conditional application for the Fetters Mill community?
Yes, I am.
I'm going to refer your attention to Exhibit A6, the conditional use order of April 7th of 1999. Can you provide a brief overview of that 1999 condition 7?
Yes, so you have two staggered rows of subject evergreens, which are actually a monoculture of Douglas fir and Norway spruce, and they are planted at 7 to 8 feet in height and 10 feet apart with 15-foot spacing between the two trees. 15-foot spacing between the trees.
Are there areas of the existing perimeter where this planting scheme is still in place?
It is indeed.
And why is this planting scheme from the 1999 order not viable?
Well, first and foremost, we have a monoculture of two species. Our main predominant species is the fir, which has, there's a couple different issues. One being best management practices for the planting and the establishment and post-care of these trees. Secondly, these trees have been impacted through needle cast, which is a fungal disease of the needles. And the trees are failing mostly because of the improper spacing and the ability to let the trees achieve their ultimate goal.
I'm going to refer your attention to what we remarked A7, which is the conditional use decision in order of January 20th of 2015. Was this an amendment of the original 1999 condition 7?
It is.
And can you provide a brief overview of what that 2015 amendment condition required?
Correct. Similar to the 1999, except for the fact that the trees are no longer 15 feet apart, they are 20 feet apart. Still with a 10-foot spacing between the rows.
And are there areas of the community where this perimeter planting scheme is in place?
Yes.
And what's the condition of that 2015
In the front, along Lap Road, we do have one area that was planted, I believe, was it Michael, 5 to 6 years ago? That is currently okay. However, As these trees mature and reach their maximum benefit, they will fail. On the eastern side of the property, we have that where it's currently failing today.
And just to lay it out specifically, why is this 2015 plan not viable?
Because of the planting spacing.
Was your office responsible for the preparation of A8, which is a buffers layout plan and a buffers detail plan?
Yes.
Referring to that landscaping plan, can you just walk us through what is proposed to be planted at the Fetters Mill community?
So correct. I guess we'll start with the southern portion along Lap Road, which is a mixed palette of 5 different species, trying to create diversity, trying to create a sustainable with longevity-minded plant material. And we're using, to get more color, more texture, we're using southern magnolia, white spruce, cryptomeria, green giant arborvitae, and Norway spruce.
And let's walk around the perimeter. How about the other areas? What are you planning for those?
So in the north buffer, we are utilizing the 1999 Order 7 of planting a monoculture of Norway spruce at 10 to 15 foot spacing on behalf of the request of the township. Excuse me, 2015. Yeah, excuse me, 2015, yes.
For clarity, so on the northeastern perimeter, is that proposed to be planted in 2015?
That is correct.
Was that at the request of the township?
Indeed it was.
And what's the condition in that area?
Failing. Trees are currently failing today.
Are there any plantings proposed currently for the eastern boundary?
Not today, during the Lap Road and northern boundary. However, in the future, we will be managing the trees that are failing and dying along the eastern and western boundary. That are failing on the eastern and western boundary.
So on the eastern boundary, is there an existing dense vegetative buffer?
There is. There's a current existing natural buffer that divides between Fetters Mill and the adjacent properties.
And is that boundary shown in blue on the plan that we're looking at, which is Exhibit A8?
That is correct.
And is there also an existing dense vegetative buffer on the northwestern perimeter, also identified in blue in Exhibit A8?
Yes, that is correct.
Are there any plantings proposed immediately with regard to the northwestern perimeter or the eastern perimeter?
Not during the plan for the Lap Road and northern buffer. Sorry, not at the current time. Perfect.
All right, is that better? Yeah?
Can you hear us? Good.
Yes.
All right, we've got a better plan in place then. All right. And John, can you walk us through, in the future, not now, but in the future, what kind of planting scheme is proposed for the western perimeter buffer?
So as trees die or fail, we are going to be planting a density of 1.5 inch stock that will go into the natural buffer.
And how do you anticipate these naturally occurring vegetative buffers on the eastern perimeter and the northwestern perimeter to aid in the screening of the community?
It's an existing buffer that's actually today screening, providing ample screening.
And why is this overall proposed buffer plan that's Exhibit A8 preferable to the prior 2 conditions that were in place for the perimeter landscaping?
Because it allows for proper spacing, a diverse palette, and a proper species mix.
And Mike, or I'm sorry, John, have you worked closely with the township's landscaping consultant as well as the director of planning to identify the current issues that are on the property and to develop a plan that will address those issues going forward far, far into the future?
Absolutely. So I met with Mr. Kavanaugh twice on site, Mr. Barner once, and had numerous phone calls and email exchanges with Mr. Kavanaugh.
And the applicant is proposing to amend this amended condition 7 in order to reflect what is shown on this Exhibit A8 plan. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And does the proposed condition 7, which we've marked as Exhibit A9, does that contemplate some oversight by the township's zoning officer?
Does not.
Let me reiterate that. Does it contemplate some oversight in terms of having the zoning officer review the trees that are being removed?
Oh, yes, yes, sorry about that, yes.
Okay. And will the zoning officer also continue in that role into the future to make sure that the plantings that are being done and the removal that's being done on the community meet the township's requirements?
That is correct.
And what is the proposed timeline if the board were to grant the conditional use that's requested this evening for the plantings?
So our planting plan, we're hoping to get at least the northern buffer planted this fall and the lap road by spring, May 15th.
Are you familiar with the criteria set forth in the ordinance section 200-115E and F?
Yes,
And generally, does the application comply with those standards?
it does.
Will the amended condition be detrimental to the appropriate use of adjacent properties or the surrounding community in any way?
It will not.
And is the purpose of amending this condition actually to benefit both the residents within the community as well as the neighboring property owners who have to look at this buffer on a regular basis?
Most certainly it will.
Do you anticipate this amendment to have any impact to congestion on pedestrian or vehicular traffic?
Will not.
Do you anticipate any impact to the existing facilities for ingress or egress to the community?
I do not.
In fact, do you anticipate that the site triangles might actually improve for the existing driveways with this new planting scheme?
I do indeed.
Do you anticipate any increase in danger of fire or endangerment of the public's safety?
I do not.
Do you anticipate any impact to overcrowding of land or concentration of population?
I do not.
What about transportation or public facilities? Will be there any impact with regard to the amended condition?
Absolutely not. We're just replacing the buffer.
And are you anticipating any adverse effect to the public health, moral, safety, or general welfare?
Just improvement.
And do you anticipate that this amendment will run counter to the spirit and purpose of the zoning ordinance?
Yes, indeed.
Will it run counter to the spirit of the zoning ordinance?
No, it will not. Sorry, I didn't hear the counterpart.
Do you anticipate that this planting scheme will actually further satisfy the requirements of the ordinance in terms of accomplishing a screening and buffering goal?
Yes.
Thank you. I have no further direct questions for Mr. Hosbach.
And Gia, these are your two witnesses?
This is it.
Okay. I did not ask at the beginning of the hearing, board members, if anybody in the audience wanted party status, and I can certainly explain that, but this board does allow, whether you have party status or not, for you to, residents to ask questions of the witnesses or to testify for or against the application. And I do believe, as Donna had indicated, there are people on Zoom also here for this hearing. So at this time, if the board wants, we could do the party status first, or the board can start asking questions first.
Party status.
Okay. Does anybody in the audience, and please stand up and come to the microphone.
Well, good evening. I'm Mark Sigelski, 25 Almy Drive.
25?
Almy Drive. S-U-G-A-L-S-K-I. Yes. And I'm an adjacent property owner, and basically in 1999, We were a party to that status.
Mr. Sugalski, and I apologize if I say that incorrectly, are you asking for party status because Ms. Gerber has the right to cross?
I'm going to ask to be party status. I'm not going to oppose this, but I'm reflecting that I was party status in 1999.
Okay.
And I was party status in 2015. So we go through the whole history a little bit, and not getting into the weeds, just what I was going to say is our concerns have been met. So I'm not opposing this, but I do want to be party to it.
Okay.
Okay, so with the northeastern boundary, we're not going to oppose it, and the amended condition use is agreed, you know, if we can be agreement to it, and basically some of the main concerns, and I got to thank Mr. Barner for helping us out, kind of going through these iterations. There was some other mistakes, but I'm not going to get into them. But looking at the concerns for the timing and phasing, I think you've addressed that for the fall, for the northeastern type border to maybe be done first, and then at least by May of 2023.
And actually, can I interrupt there? I was just looking at that condition, Gina. Did you mean, you say during the autumn planning window of 2023?
That's wrong.
Yeah, do you mean 2022 or did you mean May 15th, 2024? Because the fall, you would have to, it doesn't make sense the way the dates are here. Because it would, if the fall of 2023 completed no later than May 15th, 2023, do you see what I'm saying? It's either May 15th, 2024 or it's the fall of 2022.
You're correct. Thank you for pointing that out. So the first date should be autumn planting window of 2022.
2022, okay. Thank you, Mr. Strigalski. Sorry.
Yeah, we're on an expedited schedule on
That's what I figured, but I wanted to check.
And the other concern is I expressed, and I thank Zach and the planning for dealing with me, would be once they start this or initiate it, that they would complete the mission. They wouldn't take down trees, and I explained that. So I think we're all good, not opposing it. It looks like a good plan. And I think, to tell you the truth, looking at some other parties, I would say that the spacing, a lot of it, in the very beginning, their mistakes were 10 by 10 is where they were in the beginning of 1999. Then it went to 2015. They opened it up to 15 feet to 20 feet. So not so much. Thank you, guys.
Anyone else in the audience?
Yes, I'd like to request party status.
And your name?
Brian Brook, B-R-Y-A-N, B-R-O-O-K. I'm going to sorry, Brook, B-R-O-O-K. I live at 140 Lap Road, which is an adjacent property.
Gina, any objection?
No objection.
Okay.
So is now the point at which I just introduce myself to the party or present my points?
Ms. Gerber had no objection to party status, so you can go ahead, either ask questions or are you making a statement?
I am, yes.
Okay. Technically, we should have you sworn if you're making statements.
I think we need a taller mic.
Yes.
Do you swear or affirm this testimony yourself to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. So before I get into the things that I wanted to say, I just wanted to address one point here. For the picture that's shown, we have the southern perimeter in pink and then an orange western southern perimeter. Could you please bring up the proposed change to condition 7? And I'm looking for the wording of what the perimeters are, because I haven't seen that called out in the wording. I just see this now in the picture. It's actually B, yeah, slightly up. So this is the wording that's being submitted, and it specifically only has one half of Lap Road. So it's got parallel to Lap Road, eastern property line between Fetters Mill Drive. So if this is what the wording is, then that picture is not consistent with what that wording is. So could you address the fact that this is what the wording is for the conditional use, but it doesn't specify the southern portion of the southern border? Or just the western portion of the southern border?
So the purpose of the condition is to be read in conjunction with Exhibit A8, which is the map. So show me again exactly the language that you're having trouble with.
Well, I'm not in trouble with it. This is inconsistent with the
believe it's
picture.
inconsistent.
Yeah, so it's some. Yeah, sorry. It's the contrast between what's here and what's in the wording, yeah. So here we refer to the southern perimeter as that pink peach on a purple line. And then we've got the peach over there as the western southern perimeter. But, so this has two separate things, right? We're going to do one condition on one side, we're going to do something else on the other. But if we contrast that to what the wording is in the conditional use application, right? There is no specification for the difference on that southern perimeter.
So the terming western southern perimeter is the difficulty here.
It's what's inconsistent with the wording that's in the conditional use, yes.
And I have no problem amending that condition to reflect the discrepancy that Mr. Brook is pointing out. I think the plan clearly intends that the color coding represents and matches up with the notes on the plan. So the western southern perimeter is that area in orange. And then the southern perimeter, which if you'll scooch over on the plan slightly, is that area that's identified in purple. So the southern perimeter corresponds with subsection B of the proposed condition. And the western / southern perimeter corresponds with the western perimeter subsection D of the proposed amendment.
So if we were to amend D to say western / southern perimeter, does that address your issue, Mr. Brook?
The way that it's worded, it says parallel to Lap Road between Fetters Mill Drive and the eastern property line.
And I think maybe we remove the eastern property line. Is that causing confusion? Sounds like that might be causing confusion.
So deleting, you might have to
No
give me a
confusion on my part.
the eastern property line in B. And then I amend D to say western / southern.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I got it. Yeah, that's what I have. Does that address your issue, Mr. Brook?
It is. I guess as we'll get into my comments, I just want to make sure it's what's the consistency on that southern perimeter.
Totally understand.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. So again, I live on 140 Lap Road, which is, as you look at that purple line, it's the house right in the middle. I've lived here for 18 years. The southern perimeter is significant in the sense that it's the longest length of the perimeter that we've talked about here today, and it's the only road-facing perimeter. It's the, several of the other ones are sort of, between two different properties of personal property. This is obviously on a public road. This is the, oh, sorry. So Lap Road is a significant perimeter, the southern perimeter. It's the longest length. It's the only perimeter on a public road. It's the main entrance to Fetters Mill. If you're going into Fetters Mill, you're coming on either side of that southern perimeter. It's also the only perimeter with a public access sidewalk and has a fair amount of vehicle traffic and pedestrian traffic as well that take advantage of those sidewalks. I'm glad this is being resolved. It's been this way for a number of years, so I'm hoping that through this process it does get addressed. I did participate in the Planning Commission meeting. Essentially, the item was tabled. She did host a meeting, which I attended. I provided my feedback at that time before we got to the hearing. She said she'd taken into consideration, but there's been no change to the plan since that meeting. So I just wanted to, I appreciate the opportunity to provide my input. Unfortunately, nothing had changed. I think the good news here is we all are looking for an effective screen. Nobody wants to look in somebody else's backyard. and I think it's an increased, privacy for everyone involved. I think we do have different views on what the definition of effective is and our plan to get there. I'm going to go over just the history because I think some of the measurements were perhaps stated incorrectly. In 1999, the original conditional use, the wording was planted in 2 staggered rows, 10 feet apart. Each row is 10 feet apart. So it's 10, 10, and then 10 between the two. I believe earlier it was stated that was 15. In 2015, it was adjusted to say it's planted in 2 staggered rows, trees within each row 15 to 20 feet apart. So it changed from 10 to 15 to 20 between 1999 and 2015. But there was an exception. It was unless it's in the northeastern perimeter, then that will be 15. So at this point, coming out of 2015, we've got 2 definitions of how we're going to handle this planting. Now here we are today in 2022. The proposed conditional use for that southern perimeter says 1 row planted in a triangular fashion to allow for, quote, optimal growth, 23 to 27 feet, depending on the species. So we've gone from 10 feet and roughly 16 years later, 15 to 20 feet, and now we're faced with an increase of going to 23 to 27 feet. There's 4 other perimeters, which we kind of just talked about, and I'll get to that in a moment. But I think the main argument that's being made here is that the spacing is the issue for the ineffective screen, and I don't think that that's accurate. So the first point, and I don't know how to introduce evidence, I provided some pictures. But as the applicant has mentioned, the original installation, right, according to the 1999 wording, was incorrect, right? It wasn't done. It was spaced at less than 10 feet in some cases. And then I have, which is already previously entered into evidence of, actually I'm going to talk about this one because I think it's significant. The 2015 so I'm looking at this document. I guess that's the 2015 conditional use application. There was also expert testimony that was provided in that one. That was Mr. Johnson. He was a certified arborist, owner of William Johnson and Company. His comment said the original buffer was installed so that the 2 rows of trees are adjacent rather than alternating. Alternating the trees provide the same privacy. Alternating the trees provides the same privacy, but provides more room for the trees to grow and better air circulation. So the point being is the 1999 wasn't done, right, to what 1999 conditional use should have been. I think we've all acknowledged that at this point. The point that I'd now like to introduce is, and this is where if you could please put those pictures up, is the second reason why we've got an ineffective screen is the maintenance that's been done since 1999.
Zach, I don't know, do we get this? Because I'm going to mark this brook, and is it a series of photos? How many do you know?
Roughly 10.
11 photos? Okay, I'll mark that brook exhibit 1, 11 photos.
Okay, so I am on the outside looking into the southern perimeter. So what you can start to see there is, while we've already acknowledged that the spacing is the issue, if you can see right at the base of that tree, we have what may just look like a weed. However, that weed tree goes far up into the canopy. So next picture, please. This is that same weed tree. I don't know how large it is. It's quite large. So my contention is that there was some maintenance done that this wouldn't continue to be there. Next picture, please. This is that weed tree, which is almost roughly the size of the tree that's in place. So at any point when this was planted in 1999, between now, whether we're going to replace trees or not, a contending tree that's 6 inches away from that is certainly not best practices of maintenance. Next picture, please. This just shows that tree, how high up it goes into the canopy, such that it's not a hidden condition that maybe someone wouldn't notice. It's quite apparent. Next picture, please. So this tree is, again, on the southern perimeter. It is not in this buffer. I think, as you might be able to tell, the street on the right-hand side, the public access sidewalk, and then behind it is, in fact, the perimeter as we've defined it, and the buffer screening. But this tree has been in this condition roughly 3 years. There's no spacing issues whatsoever. This is not a needle cast issue. It's not even an evergreen tree. But this is just another example of the maintenance that's going on with these trees currently. Next picture, please. So again, southern perimeter. You can see this is a tree. In the distance, there are 2 others. This one clearly is not long for life. This is before we've lost any foliage due to the fall. So that tree, I don't know how long that will last. Again, nothing to do with spacing. Next picture, please. This is just the indication of how this was planted in the volcano mulch bed. You see fungus growing around the base of the trees.
I'm going to make a bit of an objection here, only to the extent that these are street trees. I'm sorry. I'm going to make an objection only to the extent that what we're discussing currently are street trees that is not part of the application, has nothing to do with the perimeter buffer that we're actually considering amending the condition for. So while I understand Mr. Brook is trying to make a point here, I think that these photos are slightly misleading and actually inapplicable to the application.
Are they within the township right-of-way then, I guess?
I would love to give you an answer for that, but I don't have one. And that's part of the issue is it's unclear at this time whether these are actually the applicant's responsibility or the township's responsibility. I feel like this is an entirely unrelated issue.
Sure. No, I understand. And I guess I
think you have to.
let them, let him finish first before asking questions? Go ahead. Yeah.
How many more photos do you have? Okay.
Not many, but the point here is the maintenance, right? We've seen the maintenance of the buffer. We've seen the maintenance of these trees. Perhaps the township deals with this. I don't think they do. But I'll stop with the maintenance of the trees.
The photos that were taken of the non-street trees, they were taken from the street itself, correct?
Right.
And I don't know if it's still accurate. I'm looking at a Google map of the front of your house. It's from 2012. And there's a pretty good row of trees there. Are those trees still on your property to provide somewhat of a, I don't know if you want to call it effective screen, but blocks the view somewhat?
Somewhat, and I do maintain an effective screen of my property. Somewhat, and I do maintain an effective screen of my property.
It looks it, yeah. I mean, so to really see the effective or non-effective screen on Fetters Mill, you have to go out on the street.
I would agree with that.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that, that's all.
Okay, so the second main point here for why the screen has become ineffective is the poor maintenance, which we just discussed. The third reason, I think this one's the most important, is that southern perimeter north of Fetters Mill Drive, right? So the part that we saw in the picture there, that was what was originally included, yes, that purple line. There has been no change to this planting to go to the 2015 upgraded spacing. So there's been some selective replacement. I'd estimate 8 trees. But the point I'm making is there's been no attempt to see if the 2015 change is effectual. These are still at the existing 10-foot spacing. So for these 3 reasons, the improper installation initially, the poor maintenance, and never having implemented the 2015 amendment, that's why we have an ineffective screen. So, you know, why the amended conditional use is not the right answer. Do we really need to change the conditional use to achieve effectiveness? If we have to change the order to fix this, we should have heard that there's no other reasonable option to address this. The only remaining relief would be to amend the amendment that was done in 2015. They would have to go and say that they've done it within every effort to implement, again, the change that they've made in 2015, but that hasn't been the case. The second main item here is the inconsistencies of what the effective screen will be. We've mentioned all these different perimeters and what the spacing should be, depending upon which side of this property you're at. The northwestern and eastern, it's a selective remove and replace, not subject to the buffer plan. On the western, it's a selective remove and replace, subject to the buffer. The northeast perimeter, it's a complete remove and replace at a spacing no more than a maximum of 15. On the southern perimeter, it's a complete remove and replace, spaced at optimal growth 23 to 27. Before I mentioned the comment earlier, there was nothing that specified the southern perimeter south of Fetters Mill Lane, which is in the orange color here. So we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different definitions of what an effective screen should be.
Brian, at this time, do you have a specific solution to this or recommendation? Because unfortunately, we're going to have to continue this to another time.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, the basis of, so I don't agree with the increased spacing that's being proposed. I think the spacing that the applicant recommended in 2015 is what we should go back to. And so that's my contention. I have several other points to make, but that's really what it comes down to, is that I don't want to completely remove and completely replace these trees that will one day be 23 to 27 feet apart.
I have a couple of questions, if I may, but if the board would like to go ahead, please.
We're already halfway through, we've got a tremendous amount.
Are there any other people that intend to offer comment, testimony? Anybody? No? Okay. Okay.
And then anybody online, Donna?
No one online.
No one online, okay.
Okay.
Well, Gina, did you want to ask him a few questions?
I did have a couple of questions for Mr. Brook, and I also had a couple of follow-up redirect for Mr. Hosbach to address some of the issues that were raised. About 5 minutes worth of. So, Mr. Brook, do you have any sort of degree or experience in being an arborist or any sort of landscaping consulting experience?
I personally do not, other than the expert testimony that was provided in the 2015 amended conditional use, which I read out loud.
Thank you. I do have a couple of questions for Mr. Hosbach. That's the only question I had for Mr. Brook. Mr. Brook indicated that the 2015 tree replacement was not implemented on Lack Road. Are there other places around the community where that 2015 planting scheme was implemented?
Yes, on the eastern buffer, about halfway up.
And you've been on site and seen this buffer area, is that correct?
That is correct.
Has this buffer area failed, just as the 1999 planting scheme failed?
It is failing, yes.
Are there some areas where the 2015 planting scheme is actually alive and viable at this time?
That is correct, that it would be the left-hand side of the entrance.
And that's the area that's shown on Exhibit 8
In the orange color, yes.
in the orange color, yes, along Lap Road.
That is correct.
Do you anticipate that that 2015 planting scheme parallel to Lap Road will have a long-term viability?
It will most certainly fail within 10 to 15 years.
And is it your professional opinion that were we to implement that 2015 amended planting scheme, that that would not survive on this site for any period of long duration?
That is correct.
And I just want to make sure that everybody understands there are different planting schemes associated with this plan. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And the areas that are shown in blue, those are different primarily because they have an existing natural vegetative buffer.
Yes.
Is that accurate?
They have a natural existing buffer that was there pre-Fetter's Mill.
And no plantings are being proposed on the western buffer at this time and on the southwestern area along Lap Road shown in orange, because those plantings are actually relatively new and in decent condition. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And does this plan set forth a planting scheme in the event that those orange areas ultimately fail?
It does indeed.
So this plan sort of looks to the future in terms of those perimeter buffer areas?
For longevity and sustainability, yes.
Okay. And the areas shown in blue, which are on the northwestern perimeter and the eastern perimeter, those are going to be replanted as needed in accordance with the township's ordinance, correct?
That is correct.
And
As they fail and fall over, they will be replaced.
And the area that's shown in green, which is identified as the northeastern perimeter, that is being shown differently, and that is being planted in accordance with consistency with the 2015 condition at the township's request. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So that's kind of a rundown of why these planting schemes are a little bit different throughout the area. That's all the questions I had for Mr. Hosbach.
Sorry, yep, there we go. And your name and address, sir?
I'm Walter Webb, and I live at 139 Lap Road. So that would put me where the blue line is, I believe.
And
yes, that's my house. Right
What's your address again?
139.
39.
Lap Road. And the only comments I wanted to make here, when we look into the natural existing buffer, it's all deciduous trees and it's a lot of vines and growth that hasn't been maintained since day one because it's natural growth. But the issue I've seen, in addition to the pine trees on the berm being spaced too close, is all those deciduous trees and growth and vines have shaded all those pine trees. And even before the Fetter's Mill side died off, we were looking in at brown pine trees through all that natural growth. So when I read the plan, it said we're going to replace tree for tree with more deciduous trees. And my suggestion would be to put in some evergreen trees like you're doing on the borders that would not shade the new trees you're putting in on the berm. And then this plan would work fine on the other side of the berm where we live. If you look into that natural growth, there's probably a 3-foot high section where the deer eat, and you can look right through to the dead pine trees through the natural growth. And I believe with the deciduous trees that may just happen again, unless they're a lot shorter. We also have a problem in there, if anyone's walked that area. There's probably about 5 groundhog holes where it's all barren and it's groundhog holes all the way down. So I'm hoping that when this plan takes effect, most of that will be ripped out and maybe some more pines put in. We don't care if we see our neighbors or not. We like them. So that's not an issue for us. But that's pretty much it. And I was curious, would access to my property be needed to do any of this work?
Gina, do you know that?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
But if it is, you'll probably be hearing from us.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we could work that out. We were curious.
As of now, it's not anticipated
Okay.
that we should be able to work within the property boundaries of the community.
Good. Yeah, we just like to see it green instead of all brown and dyed out in that natural area.
Right.
I believe it's scrub growth because when Fetters Mill was built, that area was all cornfield. There was no natural barrier at that time. And everything that's grown up has been, we have a lot of vines that have killed trees. And I actually have been back in there trying to saw through 3-inch vines that are way up in the trees, killing all of them. Thanks.
Just had one question for John that might clear up some of the confusion from Mr. Webb's testimony.
Sure.
John, when the trees that are removed along that eastern boundary, particularly where Mr. Webb is referring to on Exhibit A8 on the southeastern side, when you do that replacement as needed, will you take into consideration the existing conditions there to make sure that whatever's planted there is going to have some sort of viability?
Absolutely. At the request of Mr. Kavanaugh, Township consultant, we are going to put 1.5-inch deciduous stock back in, and that will be protected with deer fencing.
Do you believe that putting in any evergreens along that eastern boundary would be effective, or that they would survive in that area?
I do not believe they will succeed, and we won't have any longevity now.
Thank you. That's all I have for Mr. Hausbach.
Does the board have any questions? I was going to ask Mr. Kavanaugh if we could swear him in and just confirm that he's in agreement with what the applicant's arborist is stating as to the proposed plantings.
There we go. Right here. I do.
And Dave, just for the audience, can you just explain who you are?
Yeah, I'm David Kavanaugh. I'm a landscape architect, as opposed to being a landscape consultant. A landscape architect is a licensed professional in the state of Pennsylvania. And I'm the township's landscape architect. I've been retained to look at this. So I've reviewed this. I've worked closely with Mr. Hausbach. Basically, what we're dealing with is ordinances are static documents, and we're dealing a static document with a living thing. So when we start setting trees in place and say, we're going to put them 15 feet on center, and it's going to put a nice screen because I'm going to get this close and you can't see between us, but I want to grow and she wants to grow, that's what that presents part of the problem. So we do a thing called appropriate horticulture, which is finding the right plant for the right place. So if you tell me you want a tree that grows 50 feet tall but stays 20 feet wide, we can find that tree. If you want a tree that only grows this tall but spreads out 60 feet, we can find that tree. So we're applying appropriate horticulture to this, and that's exactly what's going on with the buffer along Lap Road. In looking at the proposal, I support what they're considering, because I think in the long term, this will be a better solution. This is something they're going to look down 25 years from now and say, this really works well. I think Einstein said, if you keep repeating the same thing over and over again and get a different result, that's kind of stupidity. So we don't want to be doing that. We don't want to be repeating the same thing over and over again. So.
That's all the questions I had of Mr. Kavanaugh.
Oh, I ought to point out one other thing.
Sure.
The ordinance does require, when you were talking about vines, the ordinance does require a maintenance program and removal of invasive species and buffers. And I believe that's part of what has been put into the ordinance, that they are required to submit a maintenance program.
And Ms. Gerber, if the board were to consider granting the conditional use application, one of the conditions would likely be that you would provide a maintenance plan? Would that be acceptable?
Absolutely. For
Okay.
any new plantings, we would definitely have a maintenance plan in place.
For the trees that would be planted 23 to 27 feet, separate, staggered, what is the planted width at the bottom? There will be initially a gap.
There will
And
be,
then they will grow.
there will be a gap because we need to allow
They
for
will
growth,
grow,
correct.
and then there will be no gap.
And then they'll get closer together and, yeah.
How long would that take approximately? 5 years?
John, what do you, I forget your plant material right offhand, but we're,
I anticipate 15 to 20 years for full maximum maturity.
And at that 15 to 20 year time frame, would the trees then be congested and touching also? Would they eventually die?
No,
In-
we are putting the proper spacing to allow them to reach their maximum benefit.
So they'll reach a maximum width at some point by design of the tree?
That is correct.
Okay, got it.
it's in the genetics of the plant material that it grows to a certain size. Just like you won't grow to 10 feet tall.
Not
It's
yet.
not in
No.
your genes.
So the trees know this?
It's in the genetic imprint of the tree.
Okay, just checking, okay.
I don't know if the board had any other questions? Did anybody else on Zoom or anyone else in the audience have any further questions or testimony? Seeing none, at this time, the board can determine whether it desires to make a decision tonight.
Okay. We can. So you're the guy.
I believe it's a good plan, but I'm more than willing to discuss any questions you may have in a session with me. Okay. No,
You think the plan is reasonable as presented?
absolutely. I believe the plan is reasonable as presented.
So I think the board is ready to
Okay.
make a vote.
think at this time, we'll close the hearing, go back to the public meeting, and, oh, I'm sorry, Zach Barner?
I just wanted to ask a clarifying question on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I guess if the board is leaning towards closing the hearing and closing testimony, I just wanted to make sure we captured what revisions needed to be made to the exhibit and the proposed condition. So I know that there seemed to be an understanding, I want to make sure I'm following it. Is it that the plan would be revised, or just that the condition would be revised too?
So there is no plan revision. It's an amendment to the condition to more closely match the language of the plan.
Okay, I guess what I'm trying to distinguish is there's two areas labeled as southern, so perhaps the plan could be just add the subsection of the condition that applies to each of these, just for clarity purposes. You understand what I'm saying?
The applicant doesn't have any objection to that.
Does the board understand the clarification? So the drafted condition, the text, there's subsection A, which is northwestern and eastern, B, which is southern. The plan would just be updated so that the subsection of the condition and the graphic here would be correlated by those subsection numbers, just to clarify what each one applies to.
Much the way Mr. Brook pointed out.
Correct.
So Gina, you'll amend Exhibit A8?
I'm happy to amend Exhibit A8.
That's what you're asking for, Zach, right?
I think that's what was discussed. I just wanted to clarify what was actually
We had
being
also
revised.
amended Exhibit A9, which was the conditions,
Right?
to match the text. but we
Yes,
can-
so the applicant is agreeable to amend Exhibit A9, which is the proposed condition as discussed previously in the hearing. And the applicant is also agreeable to amend Exhibit A8 to add the corresponding subsections of the proposed condition to the landscape plan.
And then the applicant has agreed as part of the hearing that they will provide a maintenance plan.
Yes, and I would just like to ask, as long as we're doing housekeeping items, to move my exhibits into the record.
They're accepted.
Thank you.
And it's fair to say, not just with this conditional use order, whatever it says, or any other, if someone feels that it's not being complied with, then they can call the township and they say it's not being complied with, please look into it.
Yes, and in fact, that's what engendered this hearing, that Ted Locker, the zoning officer at the time, was considering sending an enforcement notice. So yes, always, you can always contact the township. And then our standard 2 conditions are that the applicant shall proceed in substantial conformance with the testimony and exhibits presented this evening, and that the applicant shall comply with all applicable laws, statutes, rules, codes and ordinances of the United States, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I've said this so many times, Chester County, East Whiteland Township, and any other municipal entity having jurisdiction over this matter. Those are also agreeable if the board...
Those are agreeable to the applicant. Yes. Thank you.
So those would be the conditions, should the board propose conditions we would suggest, should the board decide to vote upon the conditional use this evening.
So can I be as broad as, can we make a motion based on the changes as read by Bernadette Kearney to condition 7?
Yes, yes. I could certainly reiterate them if you want.
No, I don't think you need to.
Okay.
I mean, you'll be writing, you'll be
Yes,
drafting.
absolutely, which is why I've asked Ms. Gerber, she's in agreement with them.
Right.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Passes. Thank you.
And again, for the audience members, those who asked for party status, you will get a copy of the decision, and we'll provide that. It will be signed at the next meeting, which is November, I forgot the date.
It's under town, I think it's the 9th.
November 9th.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Rich, were you going to say something?
No. I'm good. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone. Thank you, everyone. Yes. I think I just hit my witching hour. With the cough? No, this is yours. Once enough. Should have done this first. Okay. Well, the rest won't take too long.
Conditional put limits.
Okay.
Mr. Neal, can you, give us a quick?
Yeah, it'll be quick.
Quick.
Just asking for a motion to award the 2023 heating oil and diesel fuel bid.
Yes.
To Rhodes Energy.
I'll make a motion to award a bid for the 2023 heating oil and diesel fuel to Rhodes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This is exciting.
I'm assuming, Zach, you've got just an update on the motion to advertise the Chester Valley Golf Course?
Yeah, this is really just authorizing staff in the solicitor's office to initiate advertising and such for the hearing itself. I believe we can still make everything work for the November 9th meeting.
Okay.
It's been provided to the planning commissions for their 30-day review period, so it's really just your normal 2 weeks prior for ads and making sure that Elaine is available on the 9th.
What details do you have about this?
So, still reviewing the application. Essentially what the golf course is looking to do, the golf club I should say, is to establish or reestablish a practice course in the southwest corner of their existing facility. So it's sort of in the area abutting some of the residential areas to the southwest. They have held a neighbor meeting, which I understand went very well, was not well attended, but went well. So they will be on the planning commission meeting this coming month.
Does that mean par 3 golf course? What does that mean? I'm
So
not a golfer.
I'm not either, so I'm probably the worst person to answer the question.
Okay.
And oddly, it's only 6 holes, not 9 holes.
Yes, that's correct. This area was previously used as some sort of golf facility. I don't remember the details, but they do have some of that information in their application.
Okay.
Let's make a motion.
Peter, you want to make a motion?
Sure. I'd like to make a motion to authorize a hearing date for conditional use application CU 12-2022 for the Chester Valley Golf Club for a proposed practice course.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye. Uh-oh. Our used car
Rich-
salesman.
Rich, you want to make a motion on the bids for the Ford Explorer?
Sure. Motion to authorize bids for the 2017 Explorer on municipal bid.
Have a second?
Aye. Oh, I second that. Got a little ahead of myself, sorry.
Come on, Captain.
Like she gets the lead.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Chris.
Did Chris have to add something?
A man of few words. Zach, on number 7.
Yeah, so at last month's meeting, the board authorized staff in the solicitor's office to draft a preliminary/final land development approval resolution for the East Whiteland Township Police Station, which is in your packet. If there's any questions, I'm happy to assist in answering them.
No, this is one we've talked about substantially. I don't.
So as I understand it, maybe Al can clarify, but as I understand it, the basin layout, so the basic design of the layout of the site will be unchanged. It's more of the details of the basin itself.
Yes, right now, the current plan has the basin infiltrating, but because of the rock that was discovered, we have to make them manage release basins instead. So they're still going to similar. They'll look the same. They're just going to discharge rather than infiltrate.
Are any of the stormwater infiltrating on this site?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
It's before my
Yeah, I
time,
would tell you,
so-
if you found rock already, probably not. Okay. It's fine, as long as we get it approved by, this still goes through the NPDES, through DEP, right?
Yes, correct.
Do we have that yet, or that's in process?
We should be getting the original approval from Chester County.
Conservation?
Yes, permit, yes.
And then they kick it up to DEP for the
Right.
rubber stamp, right? Okay.
Correct.
All right, sounds good.
I'll make a motion.
Yeah, make a motion to approve LD 10-2022 preliminary/final land development for the East Whiteland Township Police Station.
A second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Before that was built, that was still on a slope also, right? Yeah, so you had to dig down, put the wall, blah, blah, okay, okay.
Okay, Zach, you want to lead us through this process?
Sure. So the last meeting, the board authorized staff solicitor to draft and approve a resolution for preliminary subdivision and land development approval for the Knickerbocker redevelopment. We've since done that. We've shared the resolution with the applicant and with the adjacent property owner who are comfortable with the conditions as drafted, so it is in position to be voted on if the board is so inclined. Happy to run through any of the conditions if you like, or answer any questions.
Just cramping. Do you have any specific questions?
I know, I read the resolution, it's pretty comprehensive. I understand that the applicant and any interested parties have reviewed and approved it. If that's the case, I don't have anything else to add.
Yeah, I would add that certainly this has been discussed and looked at the past few months in great detail for this specific preliminary approval. I think it's been documented what has been discussed and bantered back and forth. I don't see anything not present in it that was discussed.
It was very comprehensive, and both Jason and Mr. Lutz reviewed it after Zach and I drafted a preliminary resolution.
I'll add that this contains a lot of details, and this is kind of a complicated process, and I commend staff for putting together the details that they have, but in the long run, it'll serve us very well in the future. But thank you, Zach. I don't care what Mrs. Barner says about you. You've done a great job.
A little early for that.
No comment again.
3 days.
Did I get you again?
It's 2 in 1 night.
Two in
You're in
one
for
night.
it in November.
You've
Which
lost
is my
your-
birthday month. So you can celebrate me again.
After you get married, you lose your zinger appeal. Are there any comments from the public anywhere pertaining to this? Okay, then I think, Rich, would you like to make a motion?
Sure. Make the motion to approve LD 13-2021 for preliminary subdivision land development application for Knickerbocker redevelopment.
I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Jason,
Good luck.
do the jig.
Yeah,
It passes.
very good. Good luck.
Thank you, everybody.
Sure. Okay.
The best things to say or nothing. So,
Here.
great night.
Very good judgment.
Go Phils.
Zach, we've got the waiver for land development for Farm Boy.
Yeah, give me one moment. I'll pull this up on the screen real quickly and run through it. I don't believe the applicant's representative is here, so I will do my best to pinch it. Pun intended. Actually did not mean that, but I'll take it. So this is the former Friendly site at 43 Lancaster Avenue. They are looking to do a accessory building addition to the north of the site, or on the screen here to the right. This is the existing building, this is the existing parking lot. They're looking to install basically a pole shed structure and a breezeway to connect it to create a sort of separated meat smoking facility for a barbecue restaurant. This is the sort of elevation view of the building. This is the new structure in question here. It's an overall reduction in impervious coverage. They'll be sacrificing some existing impervious to restore it to grass and things like that. There are no changes to the parking lot, stormwater management. It does not trigger our stormwater management ordinance. So it's a pretty minimal project. So they were requesting a waiver of the land development review process.
I have some questions.
Go ahead.
I guess first for codes, will this, since it's a smoking structure, will this ancillary structure have a fire suppression system in it?
Mark may be on the meeting. I'll let him jump in if he's able to, but they will have to get a building permit for all of this, obviously.
Let's see if he's awake. Maybe.
Mark, are you on?
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, it was not letting me unmute. So there would be no fire suppression in that structure. It's separated from the building. There is no fire suppression in the building.
My follow-up question would be to Greg then. What's your thoughts on the spacing, the spacing of this structure from the main building and what's going to be housed inside of it? It is unsightly to have them out in the parking lot, but it's also another, there's a benefit to that in terms of distance to the structure.
Yeah, and Mark, clarify me if I'm wrong. I think they have some sort of ventilation system in place in there for the smoke. Am I correct on that?
There is a ventilation system in place, and the actual structure will be separated properly with a fire separation. It's not required to have suppression, but it will be separated with drywall and the bare minimum of the code requirements.
Yeah, I have no issues with that.
I defer to you. Thank you.
I'll add one of the questions I had during the subcommittee meetings was any residents that were behind the smoker, and there is nothing, no residential buildings in the vicinity behind there, so that was not a concern. Any other concerns, questions?
No, I think it's fine. It'd be nice to see that building occupied again.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially with brisket.
Who can argue with brisket?
Peter, would you like to make a motion?
Sure, I'd like to make a motion to waive the land development for WLD 09-2022 Farm Boy Barbecue.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes.
We should get some samples at least.
I'm sure we will.
Some brisket samples.
Zach, extension of time here. Ay.
So we've got three here. The first is for the school district. They initially submitted their amended land development plan for the additional acreage that they acquired to the adjacent to the site. They're requesting an extension to just carry that through the next couple of meetings as we work through some of the technical comments. We are currently waiting on a resubmission. The following two are for the two projects on South Malin Road, 9 and 10 Malin for office flex buildings. Likewise, we just recently received resubmissions for the two of these. They're requesting extension to carry through the next two meetings. The only point I want to make on these last two is that in discussing the status of the review letters and the timelines with the applicant, the number of processes, as you know, they've gone through, they would be requesting a combined preliminary final, but they would be preparing the plans to a final engineering standard. So I just wanted to put that on your radar as it moves forward.
Are we extending anything for the second time on these, other than the school district?
I believe these ones for Malin Road were extended in part because they had to go to the zoning hearing board based on a zoning compliance issue that was
Okay.
identified through the review.
All right. Rich?
Okay, I'll, let's see, make a motion to approve the extension of time for the items under C 1, 2, and 3. Item 1 to January 31st, 2023, and the other 2 till December 31st, 2022.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Extensions granted. This looks kind of normal for the bond release.
Yep, since it's a final release, it requires board authorization. This is for the property of 45 Liberty Boulevard. They had come in to do some parking improvements. They also installed a trail along Sweetsford Road. That was one of those two that came in sort of back to back and extend both to expand parking and ultimately construct a trail. The remaining dollar amount is $743,000, $743,824.12.
That feels like it was 2 months ago.
They moved, well, they sat for a little bit, but they did move pretty quickly once they got going.
That seems very recent.
Time flies at public meetings.
Yeah, they get it done over there in the corporate center.
Sure, okay, make a motion to approve the final release of financial security for 45 Liberty of $743,000 and change.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye. Passes. A brief overview from Arrow pertaining to stormwater management ordinance.
I will attempt to keep it as brief as possible. Hello, everyone. My name's Colin Fox with Arrow Consulting. I'll keep that in mind. Just going into a little bit of background on this amendment. This is required as part of your MS4 permit as overseen by PADEP. This specific language was in most part created through a partnership with Chester County and PADEP. If you are looking at the red line document that I provided to you, the vast majority of the actual red line is just formatting. Stormwater being capitalized, for example, is one of the major ones you'll see in there. But some of the substantive changes include including definitions and structure in place if developers want to use techniques such as green infrastructure, conservation development, things of that nature. It is optional to include requirements for developers to look into. We have not included that in this draft ordinance. I can see that being a requirement in future ordinances, but not yet at this time. The main item for your review tonight is the question of best management practices that are constructed under this new ordinance amendment. Who is going to be inspecting them and who is going to be maintaining them? You have two options here. The option 2 is the one that is in the DEP model ordinance that was released, and option 1 is part of the Chester County works to give you some options. So option 1 is municipal maintenance and inspections. You set up a fund for a period of either 10, 25 years, that part's up to you, and at time of, after everything is permitted and there is a fund set in place for the period that you are deciding, and that is to pay for the municipality to pay for inspections and maintenance of the facilities. If you go with this option, you will have to figure out what that structure will look like, what that fee schedule will look like, how much you're going to charge, things of that nature. The inspections will be annually for the first 5 years, once every 3 years therefore, or after, And then during or immediately after the cessation of a 25-year or greater storm as determined by the municipal engineer. If you go with the option 2, oh, was there a question? I'm sorry?
No.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Don't we already inspect now as part of MS4?
Yes, they should be, without a doubt.
We do.
Great, sorry. And typically that schedule is more rigorous as well, depending on what kind of structure you're talking about. A wet pond, for example, requires, I think, 5 inspections per year, regardless of how old it is. So this is just really setting in stone a baseline for what that inspection and maintenance schedule will be. It will be laid more in place during the process of permitting, going through the EPA or DEP, for their NPDES permit, things of that nature. But this is just setting in place this schedule here. Option 2 is the landowner or their designee will take care of it. Similar schedule annually for the first 5 years, once every 3 years thereafter, and then after the cessation of a 10-year storm, in this case, not 25 as option 1. They are to give you documentation on those inspections within 30 days of the inspection. The landowner or the designee that performs the inspections. Correct, for option 2.
And it's our choice whether we do it or they do it.
Right now, you're choosing whether that you do it or they do it, yes.
And when you define landowners, any landowner that has a basin, a swale, any stormwater mechanism.
Let me see the exact language. The landowner or the owner's designee shall inspect stormwater management BMPs, facilities, or structures.
Just the BMP, okay. Well, that's not everything.
Only for the ones going forward under this ordinance, not retroactive.
Yeah, that
Correct.
was one of the questions that came up at the
Since you're tracking the cumulative impervious, but this section here only applies to, as I understand it, BMPs that are installed after this part. They're still held to the standards of the O&M plans that were part of the installation of the BMPs that were older, but this section right here, this new section, that's only going forward. That part is a little bit nebulous in option 1. So in option 1, the preceding the A section describes shall be required to pay a specified amount to the municipal stormwater control and BMP operation maintenance funds to help cover the cost of periodic inspection and maintenance expenses. However, then you go to the next section and it only points out a schedule for the inspections, not the maintenance. So there is some open-ended language in this.
So what happens if a township, not us of course, but a township says, we're not passing this?
Not passing the inspection?
Not passing the amendments required by DEP as part of MS4.
Understood. You would then be in negligence of your MS4 permit, and DEP is doing audits currently. I do not know if you have been audited recently. I know we've been helping a lot of our clients with their audits. And also, full disclosure, there is not an EPA audit, but I believe they're calling it EPA screening for one municipality in York County. So it might not be something that comes up now, it might not be something that comes up within 5 years, but when somebody comes in through your door, wants to look through your books, then it would come up then.
I think one of the things we talked about at the Planning Commission is if the municipality takes this on, then they're liable.
I can very well see that being the consequences of choosing option one. Now,
Option 1 was the one from the Planning Commission, Chester County, and option 2 was DEP's?
correct. And just for full disclosure, both options have been run through DEP. They're happy with both options. That's partially why we're discussing this in October, because it's been going through DEP and Chester County for quite a while. They've spent a lot of time discussing this. So either option is fully within compliance. Both will have positives and negatives. You brought up, and the Planning Commission brought up some negatives to option one, the negatives to option two. I'm personally a zoning officer for one of our clients, and I know chasing people down to maintain items, chasing people down, to get in contact with them, and I can only imagine getting people's documentation. That can be a challenge, spending just as much time to get that documentation as it would just be to fix it just by yourself, have one of us inspect or one of you inspecting the facility.
And I think at one point we talked about, all right, some of these HOAs that are large enough, they could do it, but like a 6-lot subdivision might not be able to, they might not be doing it. They might not have the money to do it, whereas the larger HOAs would probably have the money to do it.
So what would happen to the smaller HOA who didn't comply?
I'm sorry?
What would happen to the small HOA who didn't comply?
The township would have to go in and do it and then basically fine them. We'd end up doing it.
We'd eventually our responsibility. Did Chester County put out like a summary or a white paper as to why they recommended option one over option two, or any detail pertaining to it?
I apologize. I don't know offhand if they did. All of the resources have been online. I've been looking through them. I don't remember seeing one specifically that. I don't think they're encouraging one option versus the other. More so, I think just allowing the municipality to choose. I might be wrong on that, but I believe that's the intention.
Yeah, well, townships have the resources, and townships can be part of the wave that some townships are now doing, which is instituting a stormwater fee. So that's how they'll fund their inspections, if they need that money for that. Yeah, that's right.
I just wanted to add, so a lot of this will also be captured, not just in the ordinance requirements, but when they come through land development, they'll be required to complete an O&M agreement that goes along with their developer agreement. So that'll spell out a lot of this. The way they're currently set up, and likely how some of this would be set up, is that the onus is on them to provide inspection reports. If they fail to do it, or if we feel that we need to step in, we can bill them back. So there'll be an added layer of agreements and teeth for us to enforce this, I guess is the point. The one point I just wanted to raise on I guess is option A. It gives the ability to establish a fund at the onset. That is one in particular where I feel like might be onerous for smaller property owners, so just something to consider. Not that we expect a huge debate here tonight. I think some direction on whether the township really wants to be involved in this at all, or if we want to make sure that we sort of apply this back to the property owners is really like the fundamental question that's left among all the options that we've already kind of gone through.
I mean, that's a good question about the funding mechanism. Can the funding be on a case-by-case basis, or is it a overall amount based on certain parameters so that it's uniform throughout the township?
The way it's set up currently, it doesn't give that ability. I would guess that if we did something like that, as long as we met their minimum requirements, that the state would be okay with it. But we'd have to make sure we had the most stringent parts of both pieces at the very least. It seems like it would be a little subjective. We might get some pushback.
Unless the basis to go after an individual development would have to be a written O&M agreement. If that exists, odds are we can inspect and tell them they have to fix it under the O&M, as opposed to doing an overall township stormwater fee for every resident.
Oh, sure, yeah, I meant the way I understand option one is that we can require money up front from a developer, applicant, homeowner to fund future inspections. Like, they have to set the money aside up front, which I think could be problematic in some ways.
I think Scott's question was, we have a development the size of Knickerbocker versus development size of, I don't know, Malvern Crossings or Swedesford townhouses down there near Malvern Hunt. Like, are their fees going to be different because of the size of those developments?
Yeah, they wouldn't be different necessarily. Their costs, there wouldn't be a fee per se. We're not applying unless you're talking about this, setting up the fund. The only way it would be different is it'd be kind of proportional, right? But it would be dependent on the specific facilities. So a 1 lot or 2 lot subdivision would just have one small basin, but there'd only be 1 or 2 people, property owners, covering that cost. Whereas you might have a more advanced system in a larger development, but there'd be more homeowners and more, let's say, wherewithal to administer the operations and maintenance plan. So in some ways, it's kind of like, it's all relative. It's all proportional in some ways.
So the two or three house homeowner association isn't going to have as large a fee as the Malvern Hunt.
Yeah, I have to imagine it'd be a smaller scale system that they would be responsible for maintaining.
I would agree complete with that. I mean, unless these 2 or 3 houses we're discussing just have a huge amount of impervious, in which case they're mansions and they can probably pay for it at that point.
Which they won't because they can't under the zoning ordinance.
Exactly.
There's only a certain amount of coverage
perfect.
R1 can have.
Perfect.
So does it seem like of the two, option 2, probably the cleaner is that preferable, you think? I mean, I'm not trying to lead you to any conclusion, but we kind of need to make a decision on what seems to make sense for East Whiteland so we can finalize the
We have
ordinance.
to choose one at the time we pass the ordinance?
I do, but we'd have to advertise it and set it up for a future hearing, so we would.
Well, let's not pass the ordinance.
What I will say is that part of our MS4 permit, they're going to be requesting it as part of our permit renewal.
What's the time frame we can have to discuss this to then therefore pass the ordinance?
I think they wanted everyone to have it adopted in October, but they didn't really give us a whole lot. State and the county were slow to release the draft. So we're trying to catch up. It hasn't really been clear what the penalty would be or what the ultimate drop dead date for adopting it is, but they are looking for proof that we've initiated the process and it's underway as part of our permit renewal, which is more or less ongoing. Is that right?
That is correct. One thing I would like to point out, what was just discussed, we do have emails from the DEP stating pretty much exactly that. You have started the process before the annual report has been submitted, so you are in compliance by DEP. One of the classic things we always warn about, though, is DEP and EPA sometimes see differently for your permit requirements. So as per the letter of the permit, you were supposed to have this in place before the annual report, which was submitted about 12 days ago. So, but again, we have emails from DEP saying that we are fully in compliance at the stage that we are at currently.
Okay.
So it's something that doesn't have a true drop dead date, but it's something that shouldn't sit for extended periods of time.
This is throughout Pennsylvania, right?
Correct.
Yeah, right.
Yep, as long as they're an MS4 community, of course.
Right. So I guess we need to authorize the advertisement. We can do that and then can decide on an option. Right?
I would agree with that.
Yeah, right.
Fired up.
Okay, let's see, where is it?
And we could.
7E.
So I guess the issue, Zach, would be we'll have to put both options in the ad, and then it will be determined at the time of the hearing.
As long as that passes muster, I'm fine with it. We can give the board a little more time to just kind of scrutinize the language itself. I don't have an issue with that as long as it works procedurally.
So at the ordinance, they are requiring us to choose one at the time of the passage. Well, that's stupid.
Well, we were trying to get, we're trying to get direction tonight. Because we would draft the ordinance with one or the other, option 1 or option 2.
Is this guy tomorrow morning's meeting from DEP?
No.
No?
It's a different part of the alphabet.
Yeah, all right. We can tell him.
This is the group
I know,
that
this
gives
is
out
the,
the money, not
this
takes
is the
away
three,
all that.
This is the good guys
this
we're
is
meeting
the
with.
$3 million man, right?
And growing.
Yeah, all right, okay. Yeah, include both then in the advertisement, right? Yeah. Yeah, that's dumb. Okay. All right, I'll make a motion to authorize advertising the stormwater management ordinance amendments.
I have a second.
I'll second it.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Can we just put this on next month's supervisor meeting?
Yes. No, I think that's fine. Like you said, I think we've kind of checked the box for the time being.
And if we do choose option 1, logically, it's going to be Public Works, right? Okay, all right.
Or Arrow.
Yeah. True, one or the other, right? Or a combination, yeah, all right. Okay.
Actually, strangely enough, I wanted to ask, is there, if we decided a year after this, we picked one option, we're like, nah, we want to go with the other one, there's nothing precluding that.
I can't foresee
Yeah.
any issues with that. I mean, literally, all we're trying to do right now is on your annual report, there's a little checkbox that says you have an ordinance that's in compliance with the ML 2022. If you change it later, it still checks.
Yeah, I kind of bit my tongue a little bit ago, but realistically, probably the best option is to just adopt the property owner one. It's most consistent with what we're doing now. If we want to amend it in the future to take on that obligation, it's going to take us some time to build out a program. It's not something we're going to do overnight anyway. So we could adopt the ordinance, keep it similar to what it is now. If we decide we want to be more involved in the future, we can adopt it. It's already a pre-approved.
But we still
chunk of
have to
language.
monitor compliance with our MS4.
Correct.
So by having to do that, don't we have to watch the homeowners if we choose their option? So we still have to do something anyway.
We're already part of the process, and that
So-
was kind of the initial debate, yes.
All right, whatever.
It's just whose boots are on the ground, in each sort of circumstance.
Ours are always going to be on the ground in one form or another, in one scope or another, right? Because we do the MS4, period, right? So, all right.
Okay, then,
Scott, can I just ask? So are we going to leave it as, you want to make that a decision at the next hearing?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, then we'll advertise it, yeah.
so I'll make a motion. Consider authorizing hearing date for the stormwater management as the
November 9th.
November 9th board meeting. Do I have a second?
I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm really messing you up, Donna. Zach, you're kind of leading this one again for number 8.
Sure. So as you know, we've got this newer agenda item for the board to decide whether they want to take a position on a zoning hearing decision once it's issued. We actually just today received these first two. We did not get a chance to review them. My suggestion would be to carry this over into the November meeting. Once we've got them all in hand, we'll provide them as part of the packet or sort of a separate correspondence. You can review them in advance once we receive them, and then you can decide at that time. You'll still be within your 45-day period in which to take action on a written decision.
And I'm sorry, which, are we looking, it's not listed here correctly, Vicky Chen?
Oh, okay, yeah. So those first two, Vicky Chen, so ZHB 2021 of 17 for Vicky Chen, and ZHB 2022-04 for 102 Sweetwater Way. Let's go by address. We did just receive those.
Right.
We can provide them now. I expect the other two, or other three, based on conversation with John, we should have those tomorrow or the next day. So basically just punt this to November.
Why don't we push them all to,
Yeah.
when we get the information,
Yep.
make a determination. Rich, do you want to just go ahead and make a formal motion to punt it down till November?
Yeah, there's nothing we can do, right. All right, yeah, well, motion to just defer and review decisions and orders when we receive them.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any public comments? Donna? You in the back? You want to come forward? No? All right. No one's on Zoom? I will read.
We have one on the other business when you're done with the consent. I'll make it quick.
Oh, yeah, G. We moved other business.
Yeah, that'll be a 2-minute.
Okay, other business. Okay. I will read the consent agenda item number 10. Stop me, raise questions as I go through it as needed. 10A, approve the meeting minutes from September 13, 2022. Ratify the payment of the bills for September of 2022 in the amount of $1,858,986.71. Accept the treasurer's report as of August 31st, 2022. Approve purchase of Bluebeam software and equipment for codes department in the amount of $3,200. Approve proposal from Natural Lands for landscape planning services in Backton Hill Park for the amount of $4,000. Approve execution of PennDOT condition statement for beautification of the concrete island at routes 29 and 30. Scott Lambert's little project. Authorization to oppose PennDOT permit application M700 for any future tree removal pertaining to billboards located on township property on Conestoga Road. Approve execution of assessment appeal for 56 Sweetsford Road. Any questions? Comments?
I have a question on the assessment appeal for 56 Sweetsford Road. What is that, Bernadette?
Whistler Prostine, it represents the school district, and they had a hearing this morning. No, they had a hearing yesterday. So the matter was settled. The applicant and the property owner and the school district settled it. The township, because we're part of the process, although we hadn't entered our appearance or anything, that the courts are now asking the townships are we in agreement with the settlement? And the settlement increased the 2023 market value to $67,500,000. So it's an increase in the assessment of $3,243,280. So when I spoke to Mimi at Whistler, she said this is a good settlement.
The school district usually
Takes the lead.
takes the lead on an appeal because they have the most to gain.
They always do.
And then we just follow, basically, unless we see differently, we just follow. That's it.
Yeah, she was happy with that settlement.
Yes, so
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Rich, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, motion to approve the consent agenda as read.
Do you have a second?
Will second.
All in favor? Aye. And passes. And the final item, John?
yes, thanks, Scott. Zach, if you could tee up the, this is a crude spreadsheet of, with the right, I'm not going to ask for the board to give us a final decision on this, but with the rising interest rate market, it appears that rates are going to continue to rise through the rest of the year. And we're looking at, in your packet, you saw some pretty attractive rates. What we have is just one snapshot of 1 month of what the balances are. And I think our staff recommendation is to take a look at the general fund, both sewer funds, and really that's it. Maybe look at the capital as well. Since this is only a 1 month snapshot, I think another crude way to do it would be to take an analysis through the last 12 months and see what the average balances are in these funds, and then come back to the board at the November meeting and say, okay, we recommend that we think we can ladder these investments in this fashion to maximize the interest rates on the investments that are out there. Again, unless the board disagrees, I don't know that the rates are going to peak in the next month, so I think we're in a position to do a little bit more homework before we make a formal recommendation. So, Usha, I don't know if you have any more to add about that.
It's going to be another increase beginning in November.
Yeah, so this one was in our agenda just to bring it to your attention. So, just to bring it to your attention that this is on our radar, and we have opportunity to make our excess dollar work hard and smart for us, and it's overdue, and we will be working on it. But before we do that, we have to meet and see what our objectives are, and if these objectives are meeting, and then see where this dollar we can put after, like John said, after seeing how much we need to manage our day-to-day operation, and anything excess can be put for 6 months to 3 months, whatever the best option would be for us. And be safe. That's the priority, to keep our money very safe. And we do not lose our single principal and make more money on it. So.
And the only other factor for the bankers that know, we're required to keep compensating balances with our home bank, Key Bank, to cover all our fees. So once we hit that number, then anything above that will be money that we can invest in either short-term or intermediate investments. So we'll come back to you for the November meeting.
Yeah, we'll manage it properly, just to assure you. But we want to do it right away, so. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's it.
Okay. Any other business? Meeting adjourned.